what's postex worth right now? I mean, whatever you're comfortable sharing, of course, yeah.
Let's skip that.
11 million raise किए तो यार 50 की तो
How much money did you take Omer पे बंद?
सैलरी क्या तो आज जल्दी
Building a marketplace, you have to have an ability to get the supply chain, the supply right. You have to get the demand right. You need to figure out a way these two pillars are moving side by side, because you can't have one pillar move too much and the other not. You have to connect all the dots through technology.
It's at least the market at the masses is very price sensitive. So you need to make sure, and for e-commerce to really grow, you need to have that belief कि यार अगर मैं अपने किराना स्टोर से बराबर में जाके लूँगा, वहाँ इससे सस्ता नहीं होना चाहिए.
That's the reason why you see success ratio being higher for the brands, even though the ticket size is higher as well. But people are waiting for the product, and then they already know that they're gonna get what they ordered. लेकिन वही बात है, जब आप non-branded कपड़ों की तरफ या किसी भी चीज़ की तरफ आते हैं तो लोगों को नहीं पता कि वो आगे मिलना क्या है. वो एक परसेप्शन सी बनी हुई है कि जो ऑनलाइन नज़र आएगा मिलेगा कभी भी वो नहीं. तो यू ऑलवेज गोना गेट समथिंग वेरी डिफरेंट. तो वो एक ट्रस्ट का जो फैक्टर है, देयर इज मैसिव गैप देयर. So we're talking about the resource, right? So the cost of resource in Karachi is less as compared to Lahore, plus the output is more as well. Right? So they're more professional. Karachi people are, yeah, they're more professional. They're
Now
very...
we're getting into another podcast.
Yeah, this always happens. We always descend into Karachi versus Pakistan. Let's start the episode. Really appreciate you guys making the time today. Yeah, the point of today's episode is कि हमने e-commerce की value chain को समझना है. Like from how it's evolving in Pakistan, what are the challenges, where the opportunities are. But anyway, so before we start, just a bit of background and some story, how you guys got here, right? So starting from Ehsan.
Sure. So my name is Ehsan. And I'm saying this because a lot of people say Ehsan,
You know,
which you
I
did
was
on the
also
phone, but
confused,
then that's why I was like, I should just clarify
Yeah.
at the get-go.
Thank
Because I also confuse people by spelling it with an E.
Yeah, and I know.
So
It's very
just to make sure
difficult.
that,
Yeah.
you know, keeping everyone on their toes.
Okay, fine.
But so I my background is actually not in e-commerce. I graduated in 2009, a year after the financial crisis, and decided that was the right time to do finance. So I joined investment banking in 2009. Did mergers and acquisitions in a very different space. I actually did metals and mining investment banking for about 3 years.
Where is
And
this?
This was in Canada.
Okay.
And then I did I did that stint for 3 years. I went to another investment bank, did about 3-4 years. After that, I had a startup that you know, we raised money, we burnt the money, we hired people, we fired people, and then I was sort of trying to figure out what to do next, and you know, that brought me to Pakistan in 2018, and since then I've been here enjoying the ride at
And you
Daraz.
came directly in Daraz?
Yes, I came to, and that was the first time I've actually ever lived in Pakistan. So
Oh, so you were born, raised in
I was
Canada?
born here, but I was about 4 or 5 years old when we left.
Okay.
So I'd never lived here in my adult life. So
wow, okay.
yeah, but alhamdulillah, it's been fun. I enjoy it.
Okay. And why Daraz? Why not something else?
For me, so when the startup we had, actually the premise of it was to empower people. It was a delivery platform, and it was sort of, you know, a little bit after Uber, but before Postmates. And idea was to start training riders and uplifting them. And when the Daraz opportunity came, it was sort of, I would have the opportunity to uplift people at a huge scale with a balance sheet that supported it. And the fact that you can do it not only in your own country, but I have in Canada a population of 30 million people, and over here 30 million people is like
Karachi.
Gulshan Iqbal. It's just not really Gulshan Iqbal, but it's like Karachi, you know?
Yeah.
So you can make a meaningful impact on people.
Yeah.
And have that impact, where I think that living in Canada and doing what I was doing, I would not have had. And especially after doing investment banking, to be honest, I always wanted to do something that was also fulfilling. So alhamdulillah, I'm very grateful that this opportunity has allowed me to do that. And that's why really Daraz was, you know, almost like an answer to my prayers, because it was something that I knew that, you know, I could when I scale it, it has a meaningful impact on people. And I see that in so many of the sellers I meet, and the impact that it has had on their lives. It actually boggles my mind sometimes. And because you don't always hear their stories, so the first time you hear the story, you're like, really? Like this is, you sometimes you don't even imagine what I shouldn't say what you have created, but what you've been a part of creating.
And this is after Daraz was acquired? by
Yeah, so
Alibaba? Yeah.
exactly. So Daraz was acquired in I think May of 2018 by Alibaba, and then I joined in September.
Okay, fine. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Omer,
Omer?
postex.
Not Omar.
So I'm founder and CEO of Postex,
Yeah.
originally from Sahiwal.
Okay.
So born and raised there. I moved to Lahore when I was 19 for around 2 years before I moved to London for chartered accountancy. And then after that, I moved back to Pakistan for around 2 years. Worked at different kind of jobs, like from call center to working with Ernest Young in 2 years, 8 months there, 1.5 years there. And then I left Pakistan for Dubai. And I worked in sales, purely in sales. So I had no understanding of logistics or fintech.
What were you selling?
Anything and everything, pretty much, yeah, from marketing to insurance to savings plans, pretty much everything. Whoever is paying you more, wherever you can make more money. Yeah, that's how sales work.
Jo big jaye, sahi hai.
So I was switching jobs in 2019, and I was in Pakistan waiting for my visa. So normally it takes around 2 to 3 weeks. It took 1.5 months. And during that time, we started Postex. So it wasn't planned. I was just free. So I didn't have anything to do. And I started talking to people, talking to friends, and they kept complaining about the same thing, that we have working capital issues because we're working in e-commerce.
Okay.
Logistics companies are not settling them on time. So because I have a financial background, meaning I've studied finance, so I could understand that this working capital issue can be solved if you're doing cash on delivery financing, but you need to do logistics yourselves. And I was thinking, how hard can it be? You just have to pick up the products from one place and deliver it. So that's the easy part. The difficult part is the financing, but it was the other way around.
Yeah.
So we started in early 2020, and then for 1.5 years we bootstrapped, and after that we were able to fundraise in August 21.
Okay.
And then
Who were your main investors, like your early investors?
the first one was Zain, Faisal Aftab.
Yeah.
Then it was MSA Capital,
Yeah.
Sharouk.
Okay.
They were the ones who came into the first round.
Okay, nice. Excellent. How much have you raised so far?
Around $11 million.
And what's Postex worth right now? I mean, whatever you're comfortable sharing, of course, yeah.
Let's skip that.
11 million raise किए तो यार 50 की तो
How much money did you take? Omer mein band?
सैलरी क्या है तो आज जल्दी
जब शादी शुदा है?
नहीं वो मुझे पता नहीं है नहीं बट कंपनी का तो पता होना चाहिए ना थोड़ा सा
वो इजी क्वेश्चन है, वो वाला पूछ सकते हो.
अच्छा जी चलो ठीक है फेयर इनफ लाम की स्टोरी आरिफ
Yes, Arif, co-founder, CEO, Laam. I did my undergrad in computer science. Right after college, did my own startup. This is back in like 2006. We built up an engine that would allow people with similar mindset to connect with each other. I feel it was a bit ahead of this time, and especially in a place where there was no startup ecosystem. But we had to do a lot of fun things around ML, AI, information retrieval. But eventually, in a couple of years, after about a year of doing that startup, I was approached by Microsoft. Ended up moving to Seattle in 2008. Was part of the early team that was supposed to launch Microsoft search engine. Now, eventually, it was called Bing.com.
Yeah.
So was part of the team. Then
what year is this what year is this
This is 2008 till 2012. So the Bing was launched in 2010. So I was part of a 130, 40 people team.
wow okay yeah
It was a fun time because Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates were really interested in taking on Google. Because Google was taking them on Chrome and all the other fun things. So they were like, okay, we will go in their territory and take on the search. We all know how it played out. So from there on, I spent a bit of time working at eBay. So got a flavor of a marketplace. I was part of the ML initiative at eBay. This is 2012 till 2014. Spent a couple of years there, built up a bunch of basic search, recommendation systems, feed, e-commerce feed and stuff. Then I wanted to come back into the startup ecosystem, joined Pinterest, launched ads there. So took it from $0 to $100 million business. So it was fun. We were like a very, very small team, 6, 7 people, but try to take on like entire ads business. Then got a chance to join Meta in Bay Area, and I stayed in Meta, did bunch of different products, including some Instagram, some Facebook, some part of like shops, common infrastructure, for about 5 years. But I think what Ehsan called out, like that fulfillment. So my younger brother, he was kind of like involved in Pakistani fashion ecosystem. He had an agency, and the core purpose of that agency was to help businesses scale. Initially, they were doing it offline scaling, but they realized in like 2016 that maybe the best way to scale them is to enable them to do e-commerce. And I was his like go-to tech guy.
Okay.
So he would connect me and be like, oh, how should we do it? And then I would do a bit of research and be like, these are the different platforms. This is how we can plug and play. And then I met some of these sellers, and then I got to understand their problem. Was living abroad, so was part of the expat community, and there I could really see that how passionate our women was about our fashion, but wasn't really accessible. So kind of like tried to connect the dots, flew back in Pakistan like 2019, 2020 to really see like how the industry is. Can we build something which is like enable South Asian fashion on a global level? To be honest, like with the passage of time, I became more and more passionate about the problem, and then I think in like second half of post-COVID, like in 2020, I decided I'm going to leave Facebook,
Oh, wow.
give it a shot, and see
then
how
you
it
moved
plays out.
directly here. Good time to move for, like we were talking about this, right? So
Yeah.
good time to raise funds and start a startup.
Yes. We did not, to be honest, like we did not raise a lot of funds back then when the wave, we did not thought too much about raising funds. We raised a bit, we have raised over $5 million, but we did not think too much about it. To be honest, I now look back and maybe we should have raised more. But I think for me, like in the start, because I was like settled there, I was settled in Seattle in 2020, 2021. It took me, my family to about 1.5 years to eventually all move back to Pakistan.
Yeah.
So for me, that's 1.5 years was very, very tricky. I remember in like 2021, I had done 7 back and forth trips. And during the COVID time, when you had to get those tests done,
Yeah, okay.
I was
wow.
like so like my nose was hurting like all the time.
So that's your memory from that year.
I eventually moved back, now building Laam.
So, but why? Achha, so, and which is how we'll segue
Yeah.
into the next part of the question, which is, so जब भी मैं e-commerce को देखता हूँ, मैं 25 चीजें सुनता हूँ e-commerce के बारे में, right? Like it's like saying it's such a big industry and so many things get meshed into it. Like marketplace is a very different model. D2C is something different. Live commerce feels something different. So who can just break this down and help me understand what all like becomes part of e-commerce?
I can start with just sort of marketplace, and then
Okay,
perhaps
fine.
you guys can also
Yeah.
add based on your different business models. So Daraz operates like a marketplace. When you say marketplace, it's like think of it as a Zena market,
So
where there's sellers at Zena Market, and they own the inventory, and they operate their own stores. They set the prices, they set the quality. You come to the store in Zena Market and you say, "Yeah, मेरे पास आपके पास ये फलाना चीज़ है." You can engage with them, ask them questions, and that's how Daraz predominantly operates as a marketplace. There are other parts of the business that we have. Like there's another component of e-commerce which is a traditional retailer. That मैं ये माल खरीदता हूँ और मैं आपको बेचता हूँ. ठीक है, मैंने 10 रुपए का खरीदा, 12 रुपए का बेचा. अगर ये कोविड होता तो मैं 10 रुपए का खरीदता और 6 रुपए का आपको बेचता. So but those times are gone. So you buy it and you sell it as a traditional retailer. And then within those, there are obviously different supply chain businesses like you described, like direct to consumer and stuff. But that's the business model that we predominantly operate in, where we facilitate other sellers. We educate them, we teach them, we sort of bring them up to speed on how to sell online. But they operate as independent sellers. हम उनकी ना तो inventory own करते हैं, मगर वो जैसे ही अगर एक चीज़ बेचते हैं, वो हमारे warehouse में रखवा भी सकते हैं. Yeah, they can get it to our different partners. So they might get it to our warehouse. From our warehouse, it goes to our sort center. From sort center, it goes into maybe to postex facilities or Daraz Express or any of the other partners, and it gets delivered finally to the consumer.
So Daraz is part of all the entire value chain. Like, do you own the entire value chain, or like is it like जैसे logistics भी आप ही करते हैं, warehousing भी आप
हम logistics हम भी करते हैं.
आप भी करते हैं. Okay.
मगर ये नहीं है कि सारा logistics हम खुद handle करते हैं. जैसे postex is a partner of ours.
Okay.
In fact, last month they were the our 3PL partner of the month for the best performance. Actually, not just last month, for October, November, December.
Oh, wow.
For having the best performance. So, it's actually, there's different parts of the value chain. So we do operate in logistics. So we have our own warehousing, we have sort centers, we have hubs. But like I said, we also work with partners to do the same.
But so this is what like Amazon is, right?
Yes.
बिल्कुल यही चीज़ है वो भी, but उनका obviously logistics is a much bigger component.
Yeah, and actually logistics, I would say that it probably was an afterthought for Amazon because it could be. Because you had very good logistics infrastructure in North America, whereas in Pakistan, the problem that Omer described, where small sellers said कि भाई मैं एक चीज बेच रहा हूँ और मुझे cash नहीं मिल रहा है, that was with us too, right? And we were a much bigger player. So for some of the 3PLs company would say, "Oh, sorry, I know it's supposed to be a week, but it's not going to be a week." And so you always sort of, and so that it forced us to sort of create it because of the situation, because you can't just be out of cash for months.
Yeah.
So we had to then start creating the infrastructure, invest in it. And in fact, I think because the logistics infrastructure in Pakistan was very weak back then, and alhamdulillah, it's gotten a lot stronger since. But I would say that in Amazon's case, they actually had a very strong infrastructure that could support them to be an e-commerce company. They could focus on being a marketplace even more than us. Whereas we had to start actually building all the things around it, payments, logistics, all the things around it to be able to facilitate it.
Okay.
And it makes more sense if you have massive volumes. Meaning, logistics will make sense if you're operating at economies of scale. In case of Daraz, they are, mashallah, leading the market for marketplaces and for any D2C brands as well. So for them, it makes more sense for them to do certain cities themselves because majority of their volumes are coming from those cities. So they can basically achieve economies of scale for those cities. So unit economics would make sense for them, but not for most of the marketplaces or most of the e-commerce platforms in Pakistan.
So that's where you come in, right?
That's where we come in, yeah.
Okay, fine. And so you would come to say, I want to sell something, मैं अपने घर से बेच रहा हूँ या मेरा Instagram store है और मेरे पास मुझे कोई भी logistics बनाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. So you'd be like my logistics partner, right?
Yeah.
आप मेरे पास से आके उठा के ले जाएंगे, deliver कर देंगे, and then what about the payments? Like what is different from, like how is Postex different from all the other logistics
So we have a hybrid model where we do the financing with logistics.
Okay.
So if you're an e-commerce platform and if you want to offer financing part, we'll pay you upfront. When you dispatch the orders through us, a certain percentage will be given to you at the time of dispatch.
Okay.
And the remaining once your product is delivered. Okay. So we don't settle 100% because we have to manage the risk as well.
Of course, yeah.
But in our case, you get access to instant capital, which makes sure that you don't have working capital issues. This capital is not enough for you to grow, meaning that it's not growth capital. You're not going to have millions of...
I'm not borrowing at like insane amounts either, yeah.
Manage your supply chain with that capital.
Yeah.
So this was the initial product we started with. And then when we started working very closely with online platforms, we realized that by giving them upfront payments, we were solving their working capital issue. But this capital is not enough for them to grow. So that's when we got our NBFI license. Okay. And we used that license to do growth capital, meaning we'll look at their sales for last 6 months, normalize it for 30 days, and then give them 40 to 50% of that sale in one go. Wow. And then deduct like 50% of the payments for next 30 to 45 days. Now, this is the kind of capital they can get instantly. They can buy more inventory, spend more on marketing, and really grow. So what?
ये company US में भी तो थी, वो Canada में थी, कौन सी company? Was it
Clearco?
Yeah.
So there is Clearco, exactly. There is Pipe.
Pipe did the same thing.
Bayflyer in Europe, and now they've expanded into US as well. So there are a lot of players that are doing, but they just do revenue-based financing because majority of the transactions in those markets are digital payments. So if they control the flow of the funds, they can do the financing, and they mostly focus on SaaS, except Clearco. Clearco was mostly around e-commerce.
Yeah, e-commerce and financing. Right? Yeah. So is Laam also a marketplace?
Yes.
And how is it different? Like how is so e-commerce में of course Daraz being the everything stores of sort, right? मैं AC से लेके कोई छोटी सी outdoor garden lights भी खरीद सकता हूँ. But you're in a different segment, right? You're in like the fashion segment. So why did you choose that, and how like so share your thesis around Laam?
Yeah. Acha, usme the thing is कि for us fashion is a very interesting problem. In a way, when people have to make a fashion purchase, they generally go through this like entire discovery phase. Oh, my cousin ki shaadi hai in 2 months. I'm gonna start looking out now. all of the cousins are having conversations, okay, well, let's go with a pink dress or a yellow matching dresses and stuff like that. So I think there is a massive discovery around it. So I think one of the problems that we noticed, and we really went and have remained very focused on that problem, is that our South Asian community is like, yeah, as you were calling out, like 3 million लोग गुलशन में या इतने यहाँ पर आ जाएंगे. We are, I mean, there are a lot of us. The good part is South Asian expats in the world are close to 100 million.
Yeah.
There are obviously South Asian people living in South Asia is close to 2 billion or above 2 billion.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, I think fashion की discovery problem को solve करना और allow करना कि क्योंकि fashion का experience we believe के can be enhanced quite a bit as compared to a generic marketplace, and that was where we came in. And I think I would second both Ehsan and Omer in the way कि even when we launched, we realized कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर जो infrastructure exist करता था वो इतना खास नहीं था. When I moved back to Pakistan 2021, I started looking for कौन अच्छी warehousing as a service provide कर रहा है, because Laam would, I mean, I don't want to go build that, to be honest. I wasn't very excited about that. We looked for it, और जो कर भी रहे थे उनकी technology was so bad कि I was like कि इन पर्चियों पे तो मैंने believe नहीं करना.
Yeah.
Right? And we ended up like I think in Q4 2021, we made a call. We are going to build a warehouse and we are going to build the tech and everything around it and solve it. I mean, it took us 6 months to go build that. I would have focused on other problems if that infra was solved. I'm glad that Omer and some of the other players are doing a fairly good job in last mile logistics. Otherwise, everyone will have to go. Yeah.
इनको करना पड़ा खुद ही पीछा.
Yeah, we will have to go do that. लेकिन I think हमने उसके केस में ये किया कि like by focusing on this one vertical, we are focused on like global. We even today our sales are more outside of Pakistan than in Pakistan.
Okay, that's very interesting. So उसके लिए logistics किस तरह होती है? Like doesn't that present you a very different logistical challenge, like on cost of delivery? Because what I understand is कि पाकिस्तान से कोई चीज़ actually वैसे भेजना for an e-commerce player is quite expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think उसमें वही वाली चीज़ है कि to be honest, that's how we started. It's very expensive. It's hard to scale. You need to figure out a way to burn investor money to subsidize that.
Yeah.
But I think economies of scale start to really work in your favor. If you are sending 30 kg versus you are sending 3,000 kgs,
Yeah, okay, fine.
it makes a lot of difference. So essentially, I think as we are scaling out, we are realizing that that's where but the reality is that I think 2024 we got to know that we are the largest consumer shipment company out of Pakistan in terms of the volume.
Okay.
So as a result of that, I think we probably are getting to the point where we are noticing how to optimize that problem. Or maybe then we will open it up and other people can use it, but nobody has really solved it. I remember like talking to someone in like Shein, and they mentioned that, for us getting something from China port to US port is like couple of dollars per kg. And I was like, wow.
How much is it from Pakistan?
I mean, we are talking about like north of 10 at a mass scale that we are working on.
$10 per kg.
Yeah, yeah.
At
Eventually,
a
like,
big
it-
scale.
it-
But what was it in the beginning? So if अगर मेरे पास बहुत कम volumes हो?
To be honest, like I think average, अगर आप courier companies use करेंगे, sending an average 3 kg parcel, जो कि 2-3 कपड़े होते हैं generally, it's gonna cost you somewhere between, depending on the quality of service you're using, between $50 to $70.
That's
So
insane, yeah.
It's pretty
Wow,
expensive.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, again, you then have to figure out, okay, how do you break bulk, put it all together, and then figure out a mechanism. To be honest, like that problem really need to be solved, and we are facing that problem, and we are trying to figure out a interesting way, working with a few courier companies and like, going deep into them and trying to figure out, okay, so किस तरह solve करना है.
Isn't that something that government of Pakistan should solve for? Like Pakistan Post, which has a banking license, and it has a network all over Pakistan. And I mean, it sounds like they could figure this out, right? At least they have the infrastructure to do it. Do you have any thoughts
It's
around
going to make it more expensive.
it? They're just gonna make it more expensive.
Yeah. No, you see, again, if somebody comes and takes stuff from our port and puts it in like somewhere in Europe, somewhere in US on a very subsidized rate, I personally believe our e-commerce exports can explode. Because I mean, think about it. You want to buy something of $50 and you have to pay $30 in shipping.
It doesn't work.
People are not going to be incentivized to buy it. But if it was $50 and maybe you were paying $7-8 or $9, there are a lot more people would be interested in global in buying.
And in this, the scale of it really, like you said, matters a lot.
Yes.
Right? Because, like, for example, from China, it is really pennies on the dollar to get something from.
But they subsidized logistics for a very long
They
time.
did, but then they also had a manufacturing that could back up and fill that demand. So I think it's almost a chicken and egg issue. But
Yeah.
you can't, if you you will probably need to subsidize the demand side of it first, so that supply can pick up. So you'll need to
exactly,
like somehow, but then supply should ideally pick up, because you would say, yeah, I mean, my margins when selling to Europe and the US are so good that why don't I make more stuff for the US and Europe?
Yeah.
So in terms of when you अच्छा ये तो हो गया आपका से हमने मार्केट प्लेस की बात कर ली एंड हमने जनरली लॉजिस्टिक्स के वैसे इशू की बात कर ली बट व्हाट आर दी हाउ इज ई कॉमर्स चेंजिंग लाइक व्हाट इज लाइव कॉमर्स does it happen in Pakistan, does it not happen in Pakistan, is there a lot of room for it?
Yeah, I mean, there is. Look, we started venturing more into live commerce.
Start by
last
explaining
year.
what it is.
Yeah, live commerce is really essentially, it's like, have you ever seen those TV shows? What are they? I forget when we were kids. The ones that there would be one channel.
Okay, fine, I get
What
it.
is that? Do you know that channel's
I
called?
get it, like I forget, like
But they
some,
don't.
some
the
home
people
shopping
watching don't know what you're not thinking. So I have to say it.
but like वो जिसपे ad ही आ रहे होते थे but like someone is using
So it's
those
like,
products
ये खरीदें, and then it would
and you
like say-
call 0800 and
Yeah.
whatever and just like order that stuff.
And actually, it was very interesting because so that's what it really is. It's someone just getting on that platform and just literally selling it live. And they just, in China, it's actually very interesting because they go product by product in like seconds. They were like, no, okay, now next, and now next. And actually they've, because it's still interactive, because you can ask questions, you can reply to it. And it's really interesting as well that what a lot of things that we learned around it, and we were not able to scale it at the level we wanted. And I think part of it is that it became deprioritized because it was taking a lot longer to scale than we wanted. But essentially what would happen is that you watch someone that you trust. And when that person you trust says to buy something, then you buy it. It's like an influencer, right? But these influencers operate in such a different methodology, in the sense that a person doing live commerce, you would not expect that person to be a successful salesman, i.e., or a successful influencer, rather.
Okay.
When you see them on Instagram, you would see someone who was, hair well done, and but this person is just aapko bas maal chipka raha hai. And he's really good at that.
But what is he or she saying? Like, are they describing the product?
They're describing the product. They're answering the product. They're engaging with the consumer.
Okay,
So
fine.
it's a very interactive way of.
So if I have my eyes on something, say I want to buy this cup, the live commerce person is just assessing this cup and like whatever questions I have, कि यार stable कितना है, भारी कितना है, जरा check करके बता दो. They'll just immediately answer that.
They often do. They will not answer everything.
Of course,
But they will be
whatever's-
looking at trends and they will answer. And in fact, I've been to like warehouses in Southeast Asia where right beside the warehouse you have a team of people that are all just on live commerce, and there's just a boatload of products there right beside them, and their entire job for 12 hours a day is legally 8 hours. I'll say 8 hours, but 8 hours a day is just showing products and selling products. And because people start following them, they're engaging. That's how they sell. And TikTok is a primary example of where live commerce has emerged the most. But it's not taken off as much in Pakistan.
पाकिस्तान में तो टिकटॉक पे तो लाइव कॉमर्स का ऑप्शन ही नहीं है ना हाँ
नहीं है.
But so to do that, you also need the digital infrastructure, right? Yes. I need that app where I can also order that product immediately.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and this is something Daraz is looking to do. Okay, fine.
We had it.
Okay.
We had it. We just scaled back on it because of prioritization. Okay. In the sense that it was not scaling the same way we had wanted it to. So we said, yeah, let's focus on, again, look, when it's 2020 and money is flowing around, you do everything. And when money becomes, exorbitantly expensive, then you sort of say, yeah, let's do the things that are going to have the best ROI. So it was just a matter of the ROI on it. And do I think at some point it's going to do well in Pakistan? Yeah, I do think so, because I think it's a market where it is an interactive market. It's a highly digitized, or it is getting more and more digitized, young population. E-commerce is still very nascent, right? It's still 2-2.5% hoga. I don't know if your guys' assessment, but I would imagine 2-2.5% ज़्यादा नहीं
total
of the
consumption
of the total retail market.
Okay, fine.
So it's still very young, and there's a lot of elements of it that still need to be solved. So you have people like Omer solving the logistics. You have the financing part of it being solved, payments part of it. I mean, still like look at COD versus non-COD. That's still a big issue that we still face in Pakistan. So I think those things will, as they emerge, live commerce I do think will become more prominent.
And so you're selling products that are really expensive. right? At least that's what you started off. So Laam, when it started off, they were selling like high valued products, etc. What do you think is selling the product? Like अगर live commerce के case में मैं जाऊँ तो मुझे पता है कि वो जो बंदा वहाँ पे बैठा है. So for example, I would kind of think of it as like MKBHD, like जब वो tech review कर. So if I'm gonna make a big expensive tech purchase, I would go through like 5 Dave 2D, MKBHD, and
You
all.
did that with this?
I did that with this as well. I did it for sure. So जब मैं उनको सबके देख लेता हूँ फिर मैं कहता हूँ चलो सही है यार कर लेते हैं. $400 $500 जो भी आपने खर्च करने आपने कर दिए, right? Live commerce में of course you're looking at lower
Yes, it
value
is
products, so
definitely.
आप लोग उस वक्त वो भी देख रहे हो. So and the person's doing it really quickly in seconds as opposed to taking 20 minutes on that video. So do you think the Pakistani consumer is looking for a person they trust, or is it something else? Like how are they making that consumption decision? Because आपके केस में तो आप हर चीज बेच रहे हैं, right? But आपके केस में आप सिर्फ आपका customer discretionary spend करने वाला है. So if I just look at the Pakistani market, how big is that market for you, for those products, like the luxury products?
Yeah, I think to be honest, like, so when we started out with luxury, but eventually then we got into like more basic wear as well, around interesting price point. I mean, we started out with a very, very high price point. We are talking about 20,000 plus AOV, 30,000 AOV. And slowly, but I think we have been going down to go towards more masses. To your point, like how is that consumer convinced to make a purchase even for a higher price point is, I think there are multiple factors. First, I mean, we talked about live commerce. I also think like I remember like back in the days 5-6 years ago, Facebook, when I was there, they were investing a lot in live commerce. I don't think it worked out the way they expected it to work out in US than the way it had worked out. They were looking at all the data that 30% of the entire sales are happening through live commerce and blah blah blah. But in US that just did not take off. So it's interesting, like what are the things that work out in one market and they explode in one market, but they don't really work out in some other market. I think one of the things that we have noticed in fashion that tends to work out well is that first, obviously, I mean, we work in a world where social is everywhere, right? A lot of people spend a lot of time on Instagram, TikToks these days. So if other people, I mean, for us, what really happens is like if we ship 100 orders, there is a high likelihood five of them are gonna go and tell people like whether they liked it or did not like it.
Yeah.
So as a result, that that trust factor plays a huge role. And what that is, to be honest with you, for us, like one of the things that has really worked out in markets like US, Canada, Europe is that when people get the orders there, they're generally like in this like smaller communities, and that's what I was a part of. Like for example, I lived in San Francisco and Seattle.
Yeah.
Up there, I was part of this like small Desi community, and we were all used to like have iftars together, do Jummah together, and all of those things. So I think that's what we noticed, that once you build a trust in that segment, it really helps out in acquiring the other customers, especially when they're about to spend like 30,000 rupees or above. The second thing is that I think one of the things that really work out is that for fashion, you need that visual inspiration. The way your content is created and the way like you use influencers, micro-influencers, celebrities and everybody to create that content really works out. I mean, we are not the one who always do it, but the people who are doing fashion, I mean, we kind of like give them a playbook that this is the way to do it. This is the best way to do it. I mean, how do you need to do video? How do you need to do images and all of that together? And that really plays a good role. So for example, like I think we have seen data that where the same product shot differently on different person can change the sales altogether, completely altogether, right? So a lot of time when somebody believes they have built a great outfit and it hasn't working out, and they have a lot of inventory, they're much better off doing another shoot with a different influencer, and that is probably going to work out. So I mean, you have to figure out a way like what's really going to work in the market.
Do you spend that money, or would the brand have to do all of that themselves?
So we spend money for the growth of our marketplace, right? To acquire customers for us as a whole. Brands do it on their own. So we have created this kind of like, I think going back, like what a marketplace is, that eventually like you're connecting sellers and buyers, but you need to figure out a way that what is the true value that you're providing to the consumer and what is the true value that we're providing to the sellers. And obviously, as they say in building every product, you need to talk to your customer. So for example, in our case, they needed this like dots connected between, how can I reach out those hundreds of influencers? So we kind of like created this like simple tool that allows them to easily connect with them. And similarly, like we allow them to run, kind of like do a shoot through our own studio. So we kind of like build a few tools. Obviously, we do the warehousing for them, we do the supply chain for them, but we build those small tools where we can provide value. And every marketplace decides like what are the different values they want to provide to their consumer or sellers, right?
Yeah.
So we figured out this is an important value we want to provide, and we kind of like built it up.
So
to the
how do sorry, I'm still stuck on the marketplaces.
Yeah.
इसके how do you guys determine कि यार हमने customer को, not the businesses, customer को ये value देनी है. So from Daraz, I would say it would be convenience and like a big selection
Yes.
of things कि मैं यहाँ पे जाऊँ मुझे यहाँ पे सब चीजें ही मिल जाएंगी. Is that what
The
it is?
mindset that we want to create is we have everything,
Okay.
and we have it at the best price.
अच्छा, तो मुझे यहाँ पे सबसे सस्ता मिलेगा और मुझे यहाँ
हर
पे
चीज़
हर
मिलेगी.
चीज़ मिलेगी और उसकी मल्टीपल वेराइटीज मिल जाएंगी. लाइक सिर्फ एक नहीं, मुझे हर तरह की चीज़.
और आपको जो आप हर रोज इस्तेमाल करते हैं, जो भी आपकी मतलब ख्वाहिश है,
हाँ.
whatever you wish for,
Yeah.
and it should be at the best price possible.
So convenience as well and like
Convenience,
cost and
convenience,
price.
yes. But you know, to be honest, I think convenience in a market like ours, where someone is willing to spend 200 rupees in petrol to save 50 rupees in you know their purchase, it's people don't really prioritize, I think, convenience as much. I'm not saying they don't, but I think the price, it's at least the market, the masses is very price sensitive. So you need to make sure, and for e-commerce to really grow, you need to have that belief कि यार अगर मैं अपने किराना स्टोर से बराबर में जाके लूँगा, वहाँ इससे सस्ता नहीं होना चाहिए.
Yeah.
You know, मुझे पता होना चाहिए मैं यहाँ से लूँगा तो यहाँ सस्ता मुझे मिलेगा, या तो इक्वल होना चाहिए कम से कम.
Yeah.
अगर मुझे यहाँ दराज पे एक चीज़ 1000 की मिल रही हो, मुझे बराबर मुझे 500 की मिल जाएगी, I'll never go on Daraz, right? So that mindset does need to be that marketplaces are competitively priced. They don't need to be, you know, insanely cheaper. अगर 1000 रुपए की चीज़ आपको 500 रुपए भी ज़रूरत नहीं है, but it needs to be priced. So those are the two things that we promote, which again would be very different for Laam.
So what would be Laam's like value that you want to provide to the customer?
I think there are a couple of things. One, what we call is like discovery,
Okay.
because in fashion, I said discovery is very, very
So
important.
curation of sorts. So like
Yeah, curation and the way. So, for example, like I bought a T-shirt for my 4-year-old by typing in "show me all the superhero T-shirts," right?
Okay, fine.
So we allow such things to happen, right? And we continuously improve your feed, the way you interact. So it kind of like allows you to discover what you are looking for. The second thing that I would say is what we call like reliable buying experience. So I mean, when I think about like 5 years down the road, obviously for us, like as I called out, for us, bigger chunk of our sales is outside of Pakistan today than in Pakistan. And we have our app now slowly penetrating into Desis living all across the world. So eventually, let's say if I think about like a future where 10 million plus people are using our app, I would want them to think of us as the most trustworthy brand that they can have for their fashion. And that's what we are really, really striving for. Because most of those people, I think, to be honest with you, like they are willing to, when I talk about the expat and diaspora community, they are willing to spend a bit more, but they want it to be reliable because it's going to go from one part of the world to the other part of the world. So we are trying to figure out a way in fashion, how do you stay extremely, extremely reliable? So for example, we promise them if we don't ship your orders within 24 hours, we will actually pay them.
okay.
So yeah, so our average, like in the last 2 months, there is not even a single order that has not been shipped within 10 hours. So, I mean, 24 hours is our promise, but we are...
10 घंटे में आप ship कर देते हैं.
Max 10 घंटे में ship कर देते हैं, and obviously, depending on where they are, it can take up 3 to 7 days or 8 days, but that's what our promise is to them. For us, उसके लिए हमें बड़े पापड़ बेलने पड़ते हैं,
Yeah.
पूरी value chain को solve करने के लिए, but I think we want to be that, to provide that level of trust.
Wow. So Omer, since you get the data from all these customers and all these stores कि किसका कितना packages return हो रहे हैं, किसके नहीं हो रहे वगैरह, how दो चीज़ें, how do you see trust impacting these transactions? Number one. Number two, I would imagine Pakistan में COD अभी भी prevalent है because of trust, right? So what have you noticed in terms of trends, or like how do you see this problem?
Credibility matters, right? So if you're selling on Laam or Daraz, so that really changes the success ratio of any deliveries. क्योंकि कस्टमर को पता है कि एक चीज़ भी ओरिजिनल आनी है, कस्टमर को पता है कि चीज़ टाइम पे भी आनी है, और that's the reason why they prefer a brand or a marketplace which have credibility in the market. इसीलिए वो जो ब्रांडेड चीज़ें नहीं होती हैं ना, उनका सक्सेस रेशियो इसीलिए बहुत नीचे भी होता है, क्योंकि वही लाइव कॉमर्स में भी यू आर नॉट सेलिंग ब्रांडेड प्रोडक्ट्स बिकॉज ब्रांड्स कैन सेल इट ऑन देयर ओन एंड दे हैव देयर ओन क्रेडिबिलिटी. So they don't really have to spend too much time or money on live commerce or trying new things. They focus on building the brand. They focus on building that credibility. जैसे लाम की अगर आप बात करें तो they credibility है. साथ customer knows कि if they're placing an order on laam, it's going to be an original product coming in. So they're putting a stamp of laam on it कि ठीक है, we'll deliver it on time, we'll make sure कि delivery is being done on time. They're more customer centric. जो ब्रांडेड चीज़ें नहीं होती जिस तरह आप मार्केट प्लेसेस में आप नॉर्मली देखते हैं चाइनीज़ प्रोडक्ट्स या क्रॉस बॉर्डर से जो आती हैं उसका सक्सेस रेशियो इज़ ऑलवेज वेरी डिफरेंट क्योंकि कस्टमर्स जो जिसका टिकट साइज छोटा होता है ना सो नॉर्मली कस्टमर्स they don't wait for too long as well. Like वो 5-6 दिन वेट करेंगे and then they'll just go into the market and then just buy it. या उनका चक्कर लग रहा है तो वो खरीद लेंगे वहाँ से. So, because they can get that product from the market as well. So वहाँ पे एक बड़ा होता है कि 3-4 दिनों में if you're able to deliver it, तो success ratio is going to be higher. But if you're not able to deliver that in 3 to 4 days, तो उसका automatically after certain period of time, success ratio will start going down. उसकी रीज़न ये भी होती है कि कस्टमर बाहर जाता है वो ठीक है 2 दिन वेट करेगा तीसरे दिन उसका चक्कर लग रहा है कहीं मार्केट में वो वहाँ से खरीद लेगा.
सही है.
Right?
तो impulse purchase खत्म हो गई आपकी.
Yeah. And it's very competitive as well कि आप 100 rupees के difference पे so they'll either buy the product from your platform or they will not buy the product from your platform. It's just 100 rupees, right? So convenience वहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं आती. They know कि 3-4 दिन लेट ही आएगा लेकिन they're still like that price sensitive कि 100 रुपए के पीछे they'll just move to a different platform. और आप अगर मार्केट प्लेस में अगर दराज पे ही आप देखें तो there are different sellers with same product selling at a different price. और अगर आप उसी डेटा को देखें तो जो लोएस्ट प्राइस होगी दे विल हैव द हाईएस्ट सेल्स. तो वो आपको वहाँ पे नजर आता है कि they're very price sensitive.
तो उसके अलावा भी even if you're not price sensitive, so when I went on Temu मैं ऐसी सब चीज़ें देख रहा था वहाँ पे भी वही था ना सेम चीज़ 18 सेलर्स बेच रहे हैं. Now how do I pick one? Right? मैं फिर वही देखता हूँ जो सबसे कम प्राइस वाला है मैं like this how my brain will sort it out and I'll be like वही चीज़ है कोई नई different चीज़ तो नहीं बेच रहा.
वहाँ पे कंटेंट आता है जिस तरह आपको आरिफ बता रहे थे कि unless your content is different or unless you stand out with the content, it's just the price.
So content.
Look, the biggest indicator for changing conversion rate is pricing, but it's not the only thing.
For sure.
जैसे अगर एक कस्टमर अगर एक सेलर जवाब देता है तो you'll be able to see कि यार इस बंदे ने सवाल पूछा तो इसने जवाब दिया उसकी रिव्यूज होंगे. So even the search engine will not just push the lowest price. It will say it has to be the lowest price, but it has to go, there's a bunch of other things that it'll look at. Content being one of them, picture quality, the
detailed description.
How quickly does he fulfill a product? So all that will then go into. But now, let's say there's 2 equally good sellers, then it's price, right? It's price is king in that, but it's not the only thing that you cannot just half the price and everything will become okay. You will still need to make sure that customer experience आप maintain करते हैं जो आप बोलते हैं आप वो fulfill करें. And those are the things that are required to build the trust in this ecosystem. Because even when you look at COD, yes, it's a battle of trust, but a seller who, for example, fulfills his product in 24 hours versus 48 hours, the guy in 24 hours has a much better success rate.
Yeah.
Because वो एक दिन पहले कोई चीज़ आती है, then the success rate is much better. Every day counts. In fact, every hour counts. So when they fulfill it a few hours earlier, it might meet the cutoff time and go through sort and get delivered 12 hours earlier, the success rate will be higher, right? So we actually really try to monitor and fight for even your, and Omer knows this, right? Like ye wale KPI, we need to get this faster, this better, and we do it for ourselves as well, the same, because we know कि अगर एक चीज़ जल्दी deliver होगी, उसका success rate बेहतर होगा. And I just want to describe a little bit of the problem with cash. The problem with cash is that it's very easy to say kal aa jana, right? Because when it's prepaid, you say यार ठीक है पड़ोसी के साथ छोड़ दो, चौकीदार के साथ छोड़ दो, जो भी है, you get the product. मगर जब कैश होती है मैं घर पे नहीं हूँ आप कल आ जाइएगा, भाई कल आ जाइएगा, वो कल आ जाएगा, ये प्रोडक्ट वापस हब पे जाएगा, वापस सोर्ट पे जाएगा, वापस असाइन होगा. It's a significant cost. So when that product gets rejected because of cash, and because it's so easy to reject cash, the cost gets increased to the seller and to the logistics companies. They eventually have to pass it on to the consumer, right? Which makes the product more expensive. So it's that cycle really starts impacting e-commerce because the success rate makes it very difficult. जब ये product reject होता है वहाँ fraud बढ़ते हैं तो seller impact होता है. अगर seller, in North America when he sells a product, he's basically the success rate is like 99.9. you know?
पाकिस्तान में क्या है?
I mean,
Pretty low.
yeah, it's very low.
So if you look at cash on delivery, 15 to 20% is the return ratio.
20%, 15 to 20% gets returned.
Yeah.
And what happens to that cost of someone going there, knocking the door, then going like, "Acha, main wapas le
Normally
jaata
we
hum."
absorb it, yeah.
You absorb it,
Yeah.
okay, or you pass it on to him.
I wish.
Oh wow.
But
okay.
that's the reality. It becomes very difficult that's why when he said in the beginning, I don't know if you noticed, but when he said we thought the financing would be difficult, but actually the logistics is a tough business.
It is.
Right? It's a very difficult business.
So what about logistics? It's just this
You don't
cash.
have
See,
addresses. Think
Acha,
about that. I mean, I shouldn't say you don't have addresses, but addresses are not prevalent everywhere in the country either. And you have to go in every nook and corner. There's challenges with that. In fact, I mean, I'm sure Omer will tell you more than I will on the challenges, but it's the infrastructure is not there, right? The road infrastructure to reach all the places you want where people can deliver, you need that also to be able to get to, it's not, we think our roads are bad.
I mean, our roads are pretty
Our
bad.
roads are bad.
हम कराची में बैठे हैं अभी, just for everyone to know. It's I think we have pretty bad roads, but generally. But so क्या मतलब what is lacking in the infrastructure? So एक तो road हो गई, सड़क ही नहीं है आपके पास. उसके अलावा और क्या मसले हैं?
Addresses are the biggest issue. कि आपको एड्रेस आ रहा है बिलाल मस्जिद के आगे, आप 2 घर छोड़ के, so you don't know कि
So ये फिर ये तो
मैं खड़ा हुआ मैं यूं कर रहा हूँ. That's literally it. That's
ये चीज solve नहीं हो सकती. Like when say someone's placing an order on your websites, can't you just be like भाई ये रही 60 second की वीडियो, आप इसमें एड्रेस सही से बता दें और हम आपको से इतने 50 रुपए का डिस्काउंट दे देंगे यार, या
नहीं
जो
हम
भी
करते हैं we say कि आपका एड्रेस is like we want not accept an address. When, and then so when we look at a lot of things in success rate, we'll actually then say कि अच्छा but ये एड्रेस बंदे ने डाला था और फिर एक्चुअली जब राइडर ने डिलीवर किया तो यहाँ था, we'll actually assign that new address as the address on the system
Okay,
too.
fine.
So we do a lot, but that's us, we can do it. We cannot be the only player doing it. So you need the infrastructure solved so that everybody can get the ease of that.
yeah.
So if you're solving for like addresses and roads,
No,
that's what Pakistan government should solve for. When you asked earlier, those
So
are
wait,
things that-
how have other people, like other countries, solved for addresses?
उनके different models हैं. Africa में there are pins that are normally used. So when you're putting an address, so you put in that pin as well. So that pin is gonna get you to that address. But we don't have that here. अब जिस तरह आप zip code होता है, post code होता है, so
वो यहाँ पे वो
we don't
I mean
have
है
that.
तो सही वैसे हमारे पोस्ट कोड्स,
लेकिन वो उस तरह से addresses map नहीं है. So even if you put that in,
जैसे आपको पता है आपका पोस्ट कोड क्या है?
हाँ मैंने अभी रिसेंटली कहीं डाला था 75600. Yeah.
मुझे लगता है हम सबका वही होगा.
Oh, phase 8, like phase 8 is huge, right?
मुझे तो ये पता है लाहौर का ही है क्या?
ये लाहौर का एक पोस्ट कोड है. What?
I mean, जहाँ भी डाला होता है, I know everybody.
सब लोग एक ही डाल देते हैं वैसे कि कोई
मैं तो 0 डालता हूँ.
Wow, okay. अच्छा, so addresses के अलावा what are the other challenges for
cash on delivery जिस तरह
अच्छा, so cash on delivery, okay, so coming to why do most people opt for cash on delivery?
सबसे आसान तो ये है ना कि यार दे डोंट हैव टू, सबसे बड़ा इश्यू जो है ना वो ये है कि ट्रस्ट इज नॉट देयर, कि जो मैंने प्रोडक्ट ऑर्डर की है, एक तो ये कि मुझे वो मिलेगी कि नहीं मिलेगी, टाइम पे मिलेगी कि नहीं मिलेगी, वही चीज़ मिलेगी कि नहीं मिलेगी जो मैंने ऑर्डर की है, कलर चेंज है, ये है
But
वो.
are they like this with any order value, or is it like, do you see like a trend where like अगर चीज़ 10,000 रुपए से ऊपर की है या 20,000 रुपए से ऊपर की तो लोग COD ही करवाएंगे?
नॉर्मली जो ब्रांडेड चीज़ें हैं ना, सो उसमें लोगों को ये इतना चैलेंज नहीं होता. दैट्स द रीजन व्हाई यू सी सक्सेस रेशियो बीइंग हायर फॉर द ब्रांड्स, इवन दो द टिकट साइज इज हायर एज वेल. But people are waiting for the product and then they already know that they're gonna get what they ordered. लेकिन वही बात है, जब आप नॉन ब्रांडेड कपड़ों की तरफ या किसी भी चीज़ की तरफ आते हैं तो लोगों को नहीं पता कि वो आगे मिलना क्या है. वो एक परसेप्शन सी बनी हुई है कि जो ऑनलाइन नज़र आएगा मिलेगा कभी भी वो नहीं. सो यू ऑलवेज गोना गेट समथिंग वेरी डिफरेंट. तो वो एक ट्रस्ट का जो फैक्टर है, देयर इज मैसिव गैप देयर. और इसीलिए उनकी कोशिश होती है कि यार एक दफ़ा चीज़ आ जाए, मैं पहले पकड़ लूँ, उसके बाद पैसे दे देंगे. इवन दो वी डोंट अलाउ देम टू ओपन द product and to see कि यार ठीक है ये वही चीज़ है कि नहीं है, but still they want to get the product first.
महंगी चीज़ें ज़्यादातर we've noticed at least. Sorry, you were saying something just quickly, but more expensive things generally people are more comfortable buying on cards and digital payments.
More expensive?
Yes, more expensive things.
So
also,
like what, like a phone?
like the phones and stuff.
People would pay like by card?
They're more willing to, because they also get, oftentimes it's the discounts and stuff that they get as well.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas cheaper things, they'll prefer on cash, and then the problem with that is that success rates are also like they सस्ती चीज वो जाके उसके बाजार से उन्हें ले भी लियो. So then it's also, you know, it adds a little bit more. And I think part of the problem is that first of all, you have to recognize that as a country, financial inclusion is not where it needs to be. So not everyone has access to it, right? Not everyone has access to digital payments.
Yeah.
But now a big chunk obviously have either, you know, easy paisa hoga, jazz cash, to in dono mein se to hoga, wallets honge.
Yeah.
Otherwise you have the card, most people. But I think it's also sometimes we don't have the guts to force the customer to pay, to not pay cash. Because we're like, yaar, sales kam ho jayengi. And actually we've started experimenting a lot more with this. Where we say, yaar, agar is seller ki success rate itni kharab hai, तो भाई आपको अगर लेना है तो आप पहले पैसे दें वरना आप ना लें. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, or can't you give them a little bit of discount?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's we also work on that incentive. Is that we'll say यार आप अब जैसे हमने ये किया कि अभी आप कैश देते हैं तो आपको COD फी देनी पड़ती है.
हाँ सही है.
तो वो it's a disincentive. यार अब मुझे 50 या 60 100 रुपए ज़्यादा देने पड़ेंगे if I buy it with cash on delivery. But customers will give it.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is now us saying that नहीं भैया आप ये आपके पास option ही नहीं है cash on delivery का.
सही.
And actually a lot of times we've noticed it's actually worked out okay. In some instances when the GMV went down, the NMV went up. So the net amount which actually generates a revenue went up.
Okay.
So I think it's also we're a bit afraid कि यार लोगों के पास ऑप्शन नहीं है. लोगों के पास भैया अगर आपको एक चीज़ चाहिए ना आप कुछ ना कहीं से बंदोबस्त कर लेंगे आपके पास. Especially as long as you have the wallets, it covers a big chunk. It's not to say everyone will have access to it, but the person that's rejecting 80% of the orders, you know,
Do you also have a blacklist for customers? Some kind of like यार यहाँ तो मतलब.
Yeah, it's not like I'm maintaining it, but there is like.
But someone. Like,
yeah, there is a system that actually looks and says, yeah, the success rate of this customer is really bad.
Okay.
And so we're going to block them from cash on delivery.
Okay.
Because it hurts us all around, right? It hurts us, it hurts them. The whole ecosystem gets messed up. So we say, yeah, agar ye banda, you know, if his rejection rate is 50%, do it on digital payment. Otherwise, it's okay. You don't need to buy it on daraz. Because it's not fair to the platform.
It's very different for daraz, right? So you can do it.
Yeah, I agree.
And you have a market of your own.
Yes.
Right? So there's a pull for that market. But for brands like people who are doing D2C, they cannot do that. They cannot force their customers to do digital payments. They cannot block that merchant because they will lose on GMV.
Yeah.
They will lose on their net revenue massively. So because these are the merchants जिनका 100% is cash on delivery. So एकदम आप अगर उनको बिल्कुल switch करने की कोशिश करेंगे towards digital payments or even towards 50%, they're gonna lose that sale. Because people are not comfortable buying products on just any website. Right? So daraz के साथ it comes with a lot of credibility. People know कि ठीक है यार अगर गलत चीज आ भी गई तो they will refund, right? So they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
लेकिन एक website पे आप पहली दफा order place कर रहे हैं, so you would never want to give your credit card details.
Yeah.
You would never want to pay by debit card, credit card. You don't want prepayment. It doesn't matter if you have a debit card or not. If you have easy paisa, jazz cash, you're just not comfortable with that website. But maybe second time you'll be okay with it if you like the product the first time. But because I'm sure daraz have a lot of recurring customers, so they have.
We have the data to be able to say who to block and not.
Yeah.
But
what about you guys? Yeah.
नहीं, I think एक जो अभी हम बात कर रहे थे, there are both sides जिसकी हम कह रहे हैं ना COD क्यों कम नहीं हो रहा या COD इतना क्यों है कि if you talk to like almost everyone, उनकी कोई horror story है e-commerce से related. वो मुझे Instagram पे एक बहुत अच्छा seller मिला था and I placed an order और उसने मुझे कहा मैं तुम्हें let's say bedsheet भेजूंगा और eventually मुझे एक पुराना कपड़ा आ गया घर पे.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have those horror stories and that's kind of like also like a, you know, we need to make sure कि we understand. जैसे अभी उमर ने call out की है, for daraz maybe, for laam it's not a problem, but I mean there would be like multi-million sellers in Pakistan who are selling across the board on marketplaces or in general, like through Instagram, their own Shopify stores and stuff. Dusra, I mean, when we talk about sellers, we have our own horror stories, right? Some of the customers coming in and really, so for example, जब ये system नहीं बनाया था ना कि जब ये block की बात कर रहे थे, तो वो हमने system इस वजह से बनाया था because we noticed a customer जिसने हमारे पता नहीं 250-300 reject किए हुए थे.
300 orders उसने reject किए थे. Okay.
And now imagine the cost that we all had to.
बड़ा कोई वेला आदमी है यार जो बैठ
नहीं, हैं, बहुत हैं।
होता है, बहुत होता
और
है,
आप कभी
yeah.
सोचते हो भाई क्यों
मतलब क्या तुम्हें क्या मिल रहा है यार बट
So they go bulk buying, right? So and
and
then
he'll reject it and sometimes you don't understand भाई आपको इसमें क्या फायदा है? अगर मुझे समझ आ जाए तो I can मुझे मतलब there are frauds sometimes where I'm like यार इसमें किसी का फायदा नहीं है इसमें आपको बस
आपका भी टाइम जाए हुआ
आपका भी
इट्स लाइक
time
दैट किड जो बेल की घंटी बजा के भाग जाता है इट्स लिटरली दैट
नहीं
माइंडसेट
मतलब मुझे उससे उसको भी एक्सरसाइज मिलती है कुछ मिलता है इसको कुछ नहीं मिलता है
Yeah, so I think वो जो horror stories हैं उसकी वजह से I think as sellers, to be honest, if we had an option to turn off COD today without impacting our NMV or GMV, I would
Yeah.
probably do that. But the reality is कि
what percentage of your orders are COD
अच्छा अब obviously like as I called out हमारा एक local business है global business है obviously global
so it's always paid,
100%
yeah.
credit
Yeah.
card or debit card जो local है I think we are close I mean we have fairly significant COD
like more than 50%
close to 75%
over 70 wow
we're at 80% as well
yeah
80% COD
it fluctuates between 75 and 85
overall is over 95%.
sorry
95%. So for us, just 5% are prepaid orders.
oh wow
wow
so we are the probably the
so यार इसमें कोई सेल्स टैक्स इंसेंटिव ही आप लोग किसी गवर्नमेंट से बात करके कर लें कि यार अगर कोई डिजिटल पेमेंट कर रहा है आप उसको सेल्स टैक्स का कोई फायदा करते हैं
यानी हमने कोशिश की है कि बिकॉज सिमिलर जो फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आप रेस्टोरेंट में लेते हैं
हाँ so
So I
services
pitched
tax,
that to them
yeah.
as well कि भाई अगर कोई at the end of the day एक incentive होना चाहिए and
Yeah.
look there's a lot of things that are also fundamental issues with digital payments it's not so seamless अब पाकिस्तान में कभी कभार ये भी होता है क्रेडिट कार्ड में आपने एक चीज़ ले ली अब अपने रिटर्न करना है रिफंड करना है आपके 45 दिन रिफंड में फंस गए भाई अगर आपने 1.5 लाख रुपए का कुछ फ्रिज लिया है 45 दिन इन पाकिस्तान where the work cost of capital is so expensive it's not reasonable so we also have worked with the schemes and the banks to say yeah, you have to refund faster you cannot make you have so COD and digital payment has to be equal in terms of convenience at minimum and right now that's still a bottleneck you know there are instances where it's not as convenient to get refunds and returns so we for example अगर फिर हमने wallet अपनी तरफ से where we start doing refunds into your own wallet to make it easier to get refunds but that also principally infrastructure has to get stronger to make it so that it's the same and then people will also gain that comfort and that reliability but everyone has to play their part in the ecosystem like Omer also described sellers अगर इंस्टाग्राम का सेलर फ्रॉड कर रहा है उसमें हम भी इम्पैक्ट होंगे बिकॉज उसका फिर ये होगा कि यार मगर मैं कैश से ही लूंगा बट ही नोज कि यार दराज या लाम पे इट्स रिलायबल बट हिज माइंडसेट इज कि यार मेरे साथ ये फ्रॉड हुआ था on this Instagram page, so I'm never going to do it. So everyone has to play their part where the ecosystem sellers have to start participating. Fintechs and the institutions have to really fight to make not only it more seamless to do the payments, but also cost effective. To make it the transaction cost easier and cheaper. Right now, if it's if you're paying MDR of 3 some odd %, that hits a dent into a lot of sellers' margins. So there's a few players that have to work together to solve this.
And there's obviously say अगर जो orders reject नहीं होते there's also a cost associated with handling cash right so at the doorstep when I'm satisfied with what I've received can't I just do a digital payment then
can.
do we have that infrastructure or is it like यार मैंने राइडर को अक्सर मैंने किया हुआ है राइडर को इजी पैसा किया हुआ है और उसने फिर जाके बेचारे ने कहीं ना कहीं से फिगर आउट किया है
It costs them to take that money out as well. So it's going to cost
Yeah,
the
I've paid
rider
over.
50 or 100.
I've
Yeah,
paid
so
like मैं कहा यार ले ले तू पर 100 रुपए because I just don't have it right now and मैं क्या करूँ
So we're testing this in Lahore and Faisalabad. So we just launched where riders can take QR payments or debit card, credit card payments through their small phone, or they have a small device which they can tap and pay.
Okay,
right?
fine.
So, but we just launched it a few weeks ago. Uski bhi cost hai. So, and we have to bear that cost because we cannot pass it on to the merchant. Because
is it more or less than handling cash? Cash से क्या
it's
cost?
more than handling cash. Because देखो अगर आप debit card, credit card पे payment ले रहे हो, so on POS you're paying over 1%.
Okay.
So अगर आप 10 बिलियन की GMV को मूव कर रहे हैं या 20 बिलियन की GMV को मूव कर रहे हैं तो उसकी 1% is still very.
Does the 1% not go lower if you're like moving that much of GMV?
It can go down 0.7%. But it's still debit card, credit card payment.
और
right?
cash में क्या cost है आपकी handling?
Cash पे तो it's 0.1, 0.2% depending on how much cash you're moving. It's not that much.
It's not that much.
No.
Like insurance and everything for
सब
the
कुछ
rider.
मिला के भी अगर आप डेबिट कार्ड क्रेडिट कार्ड से डोरस्टेप पे पेमेंट ले रहे हैं तो इट्स वे हायर
Okay.
as compared to just managing the cash yourself.
Oh wow. Okay.
We're also doing this as a way to get overcome the trust. कि यार, you have this discomfort कि product आएगा तो फिर उसके बाद मैं दूंगा. So now you can do it at the doorstep in hopes that the next time you can actually do it when you order. But I don't know if that's how it's going to, evolve. But the idea still is that you want people to do prepayment beforehand.
Okay.
That is what really impacts the success rate the most.
Okay. Acha, moving beyond COD, what are people buying online generally? Like if I were to just zoom out on just e-commerce generally. Acha, before even that, like एक सवाल जो मुझे ये जो e-commerce के लोग courses बेचते हैं वो क्या होता है? Like what is it trying to teach you about e-commerce? जिसके हर जगह कोर्स के एड्स भी आ रहे होते हैं, बहुत सारे लोग बेच भी रहे होते हैं वो कोर्सेज, बहुत सारे लोग लेते हैं फिर कहते हैं यार ये तो फ्रॉड है, इस कोर्स से मैंने कुछ भी नहीं सीखा. लाइक इज इट ऑल ड्रॉप शिपिंग के कोर्सेज? व्हाट इज इट दैट पीपल आर टीचिंग यू?
I can at least give as an example what they're,
Yeah.
because some do offer this for daraz. But e-commerce is another business that you have to really learn how to operate. So there are some, it's really identifying what sort of product that you want to pick. How do you scrape through different things and figure out what sort of product you want? What is the pricing you want? How do you even write the description? And we teach a lot of that actually on Daraz University. So it's not that it's actually inaccessible, but sometimes it's easier to have someone in person walking you through the foundations. And you'll often have people that have built their businesses, whereas we will not have someone on Daraz University who's gone and gone from selling one of these to selling 10,000 of these. But you will often have people that are selling it externally who've actually done that themselves, so he can actually tell you different experiences. But they're really teaching you fundamentally product identification, product pricing, and really, optimization on search engines. How should you find a way to rank yourself the best? Because the way you win in e-commerce is you got to get to page number 1, right? That's where you win. So they teach you how to get to page number 1. Does it always work to get you page number 1? Probably not, because I don't even know the variables that get you to page number 1, right? Because the algos are actually quite sophisticated. That it's not like I can write कि यार ये 6 चीजें करें and you'll be on page number 1. I can tell you that this will most likely get you there. So they will also be able to most likely get you there, but you have to make sure, after you start, your fulfillment times are good. You're answering your customers. You're not have bad, returns are not so high. So it's a full cycle, and that's what they really try to teach you. And I do think that there is value in some of them.
But it's all for local, and there's a lot of Amazon resellers.
Yeah, a lot of people doing it for Amazon, because at the end of the day, it's a
big
humongous market, right?
Yeah.
And so, and oftentimes actually we've heard of VAs, right? The virtual assistants that can actually work with sellers overseas and manage the store from sitting in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And managing their sales, managing their content, all of that, they can sort of do it while sitting in Pakistan.
Nice. Acha, now coming back to the opportunity in Pakistan, right? What are Pakistanis buying online? And what is it that they almost never buy online? Like, what are the trends that you're seeing in Pakistani consumer psyche? Again, we are talking about discretionary spend. We are talking about कि अभी भी retail का 2.5% हमने e-commerce की तरफ जा रहा है. And the big promise is that this will just continue to grow, right? So, where is the opportunity? Where do you think कौन सी चीजें बेच सकते हैं आप online?
They're buying laam and daraz.
But you're seeing besides this as well, right?
Majority is fashion.
Majority is fashion.
Yeah, majority is fashion, and then it's cosmetics, electronics. GMV wise, electronics is massive, but volumes wise, it's not that much as compared to
electronics
fashion.
मतलब क्या? वो मैं Xiaomi की चीजें यहाँ पे लाके ऑनलाइन बेच रहा हूँ.
आप hands free हो गए, power banks हो गए,
Accessories type.
yeah, कुछ भी हो गए.
fine.
और अगर आप phones में चले जाएं तो GMV wise, so
That's probably the biggest.
So,
Yeah.
But there's been an evolution as well, right? I think a few years ago, when people's wallets were not as strapped, there was a lot more discretionary spending towards things like electronics. Now you sort of say कि यार मैं अपना AC रिपेयर करवा लेता हूँ,
हाँ.
या तो अगर मैं पहले 1 टन का ले रहा था तो मैं 0.75 टन का, probably don't even know that 0.75 ton exists.
I did not know that either.
But now there's a 0.75 ton AC from Dollars, right? And it's probably roughly the same price as what 1 ton used to be or 1.5 ton used to be. So you'll buy that. So they've downsized their demands. And then second thing is that they've started doing a lot more impulsive purchases on very cheap items. Like sometimes I will just go sit and add. My daughter loves unicorns. Okay, that's a big thing in our house. So I have like, if you go to my cart right now, it's like दो ढाई सौ रुपए की से 400 रुपए की bunch of unicorn related things, and it'll come maybe some from China, some from Sialkot, some from different places, but it's all cheap things that are impulsive as well. And the reason I say this is that that's an evolution in people's purchasing, is that they want their daily needs, but a lot of the stuff is just quick, very cheap things that I don't have humongous expectations from, that'll give me quick gratification. But that evolution has been because people will still buy because it makes their heart feel happy to buy.
Okay.
But they will not go buy as many ACs. They will go buy small things to keep the. But I completely agree with Omer. Fashion, fashion is sort of the driver in terms of volume, and health and beauty, cosmetics, those things drive the volume. And then with that, it's these small gimmicky things, or these electronic accessories, cables, those things that you can just sell very, very quickly. Small earrings, unicorns, that sort of stuff.
नहीं, अगर हम वो in terms of आपका जो सवाल भी था opportunity बात करें, तो just to be honest with you, when we launched Laam, a lot of people like would be cynical in terms of like fashion क्यों कोई online खरीदेगा? आप कपड़ा हाथ में पकड़ते हो, feel करते हो.
That's another question that I had about this, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, if I ask you guys a question, what percentage of adults in US or China buy fashion online? What do you think the number is?
I would imagine it's pretty high.
Everything I'm wearing right now has been purchased online.
Okay.
I don't know about,
Yeah.
Nothing I'm wearing right now is purchased online.
I do not go shopping anymore. Everything is online.
Yeah, to be honest, like when we were taking the bet of, what do you think?
But for me, it's just sizing, yaar. पता ही नहीं होता कि मैं अगर depend करता है चले. So I would trust some brands, and I know कि इनकी generally ये चीज़ों का size मुझे medium आ जाएगा, सही आएगा. But within the same brands, अक्सर medium नहीं आता. Small आता है या large उसका better आता है within different how the fabric is, etc. If I can go and get it, then I will 100% go and get it physically. I just don't, like, for me, wo kapde, jute...
But you can return it.
Yeah.
How? Like, it's such quarry, yaar. Like, I would rather just go to Dolmen Mall as opposed to go to daraz.pk,
That's not
drop-off point. Like, my point is, I would rather go there, check it, because I would be like, chalo, main aur 4 kaam bhi saath mein kar lunga.
It's interesting how it has played out in other markets, right?
Yeah.
So in US and China, most of the surveys claim it between 60 to 75%.
Is online?
60 to 75% of the adults buy fashion online.
Fashion online, okay.
Right?
Yeah,
it's not like they completely are online. Obviously, they do offline as well, but they also buy a fashion product online. And that number has changed quite a bit. Like I remember like reading this number when we were starting out Laam, and like what was the number back in 2019, 2020? It was somewhere between 40, 45. And that number, after COVID, we saw a big bump of like 15, 20 points. And that is now slowly ramping up. So, I mean, if you look at that adoption, I think, to be honest with you, like this is what gives us hope as well. When we look at our overall retail volume that's powered through e-commerce, and when we think about 2030 or a decade down the road, I mean, it can only go up. I mean, the question is how much. Hopefully with the better trust and better digitization, better infrastructure being built, hopefully it will go up significantly, but eventually it is meant to go up. I mean, I buy a lot of products online. I mean, you mentioned about size charts. I mean, one of the things that we do at Laam is that we're very, very particular about size charts.
That's very important.
We try to give you as much information. Nobody can upload a product without exact numeric digit size chart value of the entire top to bottom, so that the customer can come in and really can read it. So we have to work on a bunch of these things that a lot of people, eventually AR will come in, you can overlay on your body and all of the things.
Because that's something I think jo premium marketplaces in US mein online wali, Net-a-Porter, Mr. Porter and all, they really go deep in the description piece. Like, you know, they will explain everything to you, fits normal. Sizing ke hisab se, they will, like, and it shows. It shows that they've taken time to do that, right?
They have standardized measurements. Like US ka apna hai, Europe ka apna hai. In Pakistan, you don't have it.
पर
आप
वो
आधी चीजें यूरोप की खरीद रहे होते हैं, आधी यूएस की. So sometimes you have US size, you know it's medium, and then you order it.
That's what's been happening with you.
exactly. I have no idea मैं
You're in the wrong
यूरोपियन से
country.
खरीद रहा हूँ या maybe. Yeah.
वैसे बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग सब्जेक्ट है.
Yeah.
अभी by the way,
Sizing,
अगर मैं
yeah.
एथनिक फैशन, हमारे देसी फैशन की बात करूँ, जो हमारा साउथ एशियन फैशन है,
हाँ.
उसमें तो like what does small mean?
Yeah.
जिस जहाँ पे ना यूएस के अंदर ड्रेसेस में आपके पास ना 6 साइज है, 8 साइज है, 10 साइज है, and everybody is very well aware of. I don't need to think. I just need to go and buy a 8. In Pakistan, you can't. To be honest with you, like हमने अपनी एक छोटी सी एफर्ट स्टार्ट की थी कि हमने अपने एक स्टैंडर्डाइज साइज बना के, but everyone is like, everyone believes that they have the right size chart of what small means, what medium means. Obviously हम इस तरह चलते हैं, extra small से हम
Yeah.
extra large से चलते हैं. पाकिस्तान में हमारा फैशन है, but it's all over the place. There's no standardization. I really hope some of us will figure out a way.
It
maybe
will
a
have to be
decade down the
everyone.
road.
It can't be just someone, right? That's the whole thing with standards. Like everyone has to buy into that one thing
Yes.
and just believe the same story. So लाम में, so he mentioned कि दराज पे जो आके लोग खरीद रहे हैं, या तो essentials खरीद रहे हैं या फिर इस तरह की like you know dopamine hits खरीद रहे हैं, really, right? कि अगर मैंने थोड़ी सी वो चीज़ खरीद ली and that just makes me feel good. What about लाम? लाम customer जो है वो convert किस तरह हो रहा है? Like, what do you feel is it like, do they view these products as more like aspirational?
Yeah.
कि यार, even if I don't earn that much, this is something I save up and buy for. Is that how what's happening?
इसमें I think we believe that there are two, mostly like most of the buying happens around two things. One is what we call like either some event or festivity, like आपका party wear कह लो या festive wear कह लो उसे, in which you know अभी ईद आ रही है, I need to buy a ईद का जोड़ा, या किसी की शादी आ रही है या कोई इस तरह की मंगनी आ रही है, कुछ आ रही है. दूसरा what we generally call like what is daily wear. I mean, I would be sitting in my house wearing a trouser on a couch, or maybe wear a kurta shalwar sitting in a house, so basic wear jisko hai. So these are the two things. And generally what we tend to see is like, especially Pakistan के अंदर जो लोग buying कर रहे होते हैं, because of the low price of shipment, they typically are focused on मैं अभी luxury buying कर रहा हूँ या festive buying कर रहा हूँ या मैं अपनी basic buying कर रहा हूँ. But when we look at global consumer, हम उन्हें देखते हैं कि global consumer, obviously with a higher shipping cost, they are trying to put it all together. So they try to put in like, okay, मैंने 3 ईद के जोड़े खरीदने हैं, but why don't, because of the big shipping I am gonna pay, is like, why don't I add 3 basic wear as well?
Okay,
So we're seeing like bigger bucket size उनकी जो है वो बड़ी है, but I think we see both of like party, festive wear and daily wear.
So even globally, a lot of people get daily wear, or what do they like focus entire? Because I would imagine they're not wearing shalwar kameez out on a regular
It's
day,
very
right?
interesting. To be honest, like हमने in LAM until 2023, we did not have daily wear. We were only doing luxury / festive, as you called out. When we launched daily wear, we actually thought, okay, this is our
For Pakistani.
Pakistani customers.
Sorry, ठीक है.
But turned out they were that our expats started buying it a lot more. And to be honest, I can relate to that as well, right? A lot of like South Asian women, they feel a lot more comfortable wearing a घर में भी कुर्ता शलवार, right? So for them, like seeing, oh, you know, daily wear में कुर्ता शलवार है, obviously जो हम देखते हैं कि daily wear का कुर्ता शलवार is like, for them is like somewhere between $10 to $25. And they are like, okay, I can get a couple and just wear it. किसी के घर चाय पे जाना है या घर में बैठना है, I can wear it for that purpose.
Okay. Do you have a lot of Indian audience?
We do actually. We have. I was in like Bay Area. हम अभी एक event था एक. I was there for Park Launch भी conference थी, or I had to meet a few investors as well. So I ended up meeting quite a few Indians who were like, oh, you know, we love Pakistani clothing and you guys have provided us a. And we love that. To be honest, like वो होता है ना कि आप Instagram में अपने follower की demographics भी देख सकते हो and all of that feed. So generally, like our 20% of our followers are coming from India itself.
Wow.
And they are looking at like aspirationally Pakistani fashion. We see जिस तरह हम वो obviously हम एक बहुत simple classifier है जो हमें name से बता सकता है बंदा पाकिस्तानी है Indian है, तो we see like a huge chunk of them coming in, and that part is growing across the world. Just I was in Surrey, Canada last year, and I met a massive Sikh community, and they knew the name of our designers. They were like, यार मुझे M&R बड़ा पसंद है, तुम्हारा अली ज़िशान बहुत ज़बरदस्त है, और हम लाम पे आके वो purchase करते हैं. I was like very proud कि you know हमारा Pakistani fashion is among those communities. It's very, very popular.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine because it's one of those few things that we have a huge global addressable market for, right? Like especially clothes and fashion. Acha, last couple of questions. So if I'm starting in e-commerce again today, what are the emerging categories that you feel like के अभी तक address नहीं हुई है? So if you were to say लाम हो गया किसी और ने बना लिया, so if you were to start or say if you were to start a new e-commerce play, how would you view it? Like would it be say around making another marketplace? You think that doesn't exist, or like say segmented कोई रह गया है पाकिस्तान में? Like how do you view it? And of course, Omer, you have collective data across the board as well, so your thoughts would also be really appreciated.
Yeah, so depend करता है. So when you look at other markets, India को देखें, China को देखें, so there are different business models that have been very successful there. लेकिन अभी तक वो पाकिस्तान में nobody has been able to
Such
really
as?
Social commerce.
Social commerce क्या होती है?
Like you have multiple sellers, and then you basically give them a platform where they can get more inventory, and then they can sell it to their customers.
So okay, no, I didn't really understand.
So आप as a supplier act करते हैं for other suppliers जो कि बिल्कुल छोटे छोटे sellers होते हैं जो कि उनकी अपनी एक market होती है which they are selling in their own network.
Okay.
So basically so Mishu started as a social seller.
commerce.
Yeah,
Markaz in
social commerce. Yeah.
Markaz in
Markaz
Pakistan, yeah.
yeah. So Pakistan maybe like nobody have been able to really crack that. So this is one of the places where we see that somebody can come in and really disrupt the market.
And
Is there-
what categories are growing in terms of like just what people are consuming in Pakistan? Beauty, do you feel like beauty is already sufficiently captured, or do you think अभी भी उसमें growth आ रही है या वो चीज़ बढ़ रही है?
Yeah, it's still growing. I mean, from what I see, KVB, there are a lot of brands coming in and they're still able to grow consistently. It's not just like ekdam grow karke that the growth is stagnant. No, they're still growing month on month. We have seen brands growing 20-30% every month. So the market is still there. It depends on what kind of product you have, what kind of credibility you have been able to build in the market. और कुछ जो होते हैं वो भी उसी तरीके से, so they're selling brands, some are selling their own product. So जो अपनी product बना के बेच रहे हैं, they have better margins and they have more room to grow as well because they can build their own customer base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're also probably selling something cheaper because
Yeah.
वो बाहर से जो मैं import करके बेचूंगा वो तो महंगा ही होगा.
और उसमें
उसकी
supply chain का
audience
भी
बहुत
issue
छोटी
होता है.
हाँ.
क्योंकि
इसमें I think I'll call out कि at the end of the day if we look at हमारा total जो consumer spending है पाकिस्तान की जो somewhere around $270-80 billion है. I mean if you look at that consumer spending, I mean there is clear survey data of like where that consumer spending is going. जैसा fashion के अंदर अगर total consumer spending 280 billion में से 7% of that is spent on fashion.
Okay.
So we have like very crisp defined categories and then beauty is a separate segment. I don't think कि किसी को इतना ज़्यादा ये सोचने की ज़रूरत है. They can look, जिसको हम कहते हैं कि investor की TAM क्या है आपका and all that.
yeah.
So you can look at the TAM and there. I don't think इसमें बहुत कोई innovation होने लगी है. आपने उसी के अंदर करना. But the reality is कि ये सारे segment digital होने में जब हम 2.5% की बात करते हैं, we are still in such a early stage कि I mean we look at the brand like Rasta coming out.
Yeah.
या इवन के अभी आजकल जो रिसेंट इनोवेशन हो रही है अभी 2 हफ्ता पहले अब पता नहीं मुझे नाम भूल गया नई शलवार आई है उसने एकदम से आगे तहलका मचा दिया है
I read about it on Twitter. but I
राइट
forget
एंड
what
द
it's
थिंग इज
called.
कि हमारे ऊपर भी हमारे सर्च का वॉल्यूम आता है ना उसके ऊपर इट वाज लाइक सच हाई एंड वी वर लाइक वी डोंट हैव एनी सप्लाई एंड सडनली लाइक दिस हैज बिकम अ बिग थिंग
Yeah.
any seller coming in and like doing that to be honest like in e-commerce through social channels and stuff like that they can come in and like really kind of like have a huge uptick लेकिन segments आपके वही हैं
अच्छा
and they're not gonna
फैशन
change.
में 2.5% तो नहीं होगा ई-कॉमर्स लाइक इट मस्ट बी हायर राइट 2.5% तो हम ओवरऑल की बात कर रहे हैं
is it really 2.5%? I think it's less than 2.5%. It's
Yeah, I mean, I've heard like first of all, there's no consolidated
Yeah.
number, so it doesn't surprise me that you have a different estimation than I do. So it's probably somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5, and somewhere in there. But I think some categories are probably a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like
fashion,
fashion,
right?
of
If you talk about
course.
fashion,
Like,
yeah.
Fashion is probably the only one that's a little bit more.
yeah
लिटिल बिट से ज्यादा नहीं होगा थोड़ा बिकॉज आई फील लाइक आफ्टर कोविड जो भी हमने ई कॉमर्स में सारा वो देखा था वाज प्राइमरली
आप
फैशन
कंपेयर करते हो ना टोटल कंज्यूमर स्पेंडिंग ऑफलाइन वर्सेस ऑनलाइन सो अगर आप उसको देखो तो दैट्स 1.5%.
And what you're thinking is just the fashion brands.
yes
Yeah.
That's only 20% of the market, not even 20% of the market.
yeah, less than 20%.
Right? So the entire market is someone going to the bazaar and buying.
just
from
buying
them.
a lot
How
of
do you
stuff.
digitize that?
नहीं
वो
जिस
तो-
तरह फैशन में यू गो टू लाहौर और एक हमारी आजम मार्केट है
हाँ
you spend a day there and you will realize what offline fashion really means. We're not talking about the retail like Sana Safina's, Beach Streets of the world. We are talking about like complete non-branded market, which is humongous. And then you go to the outskirts, like small cities. It's completely humongous. Like Lahore mein, I went to some of these markets and realized कि वहाँ पे purchasing जिस तरह से होती है, it's mind-boggling. Friday को सुबह खुलना है उसने और पूरे like सारे supplier across the country, ये सारे जो seller वो हैं दुकानदार हैं across the country are there, और वहाँ आके Friday को उन्होंने purchase करनी है. And the reason they do it on Friday क्योंकि बहुत सारे शहरों में Friday की still छुट्टी होती है. So they do it up here, like come to Lahore or Faisalabad or bigger places और सारी वो purchasing करते हैं. So there's still a lot of that part जो भी offline है. अच्छा आखिरी में I think you kind of like asked this question कि people should think about marketplace. And all that. To be honest, like हमने marketplace के पंगे में पड़ गए, तो after I mean we realized it's a pretty damn tough thing. It's a
two different set of customers, right? Yeah, you have the businesses.
You have to look at the entire chain. To be honest with you, और वो फिर एकदम मुझे बेजोस का एक पुराना मिला 20-22 साल पहले इंटरव्यू, उसने कहा the great thing about building a marketplace, it's a very tough business.
Yeah.
The best thing about and the worst thing about building a marketplace, it's a very, very tough business. I think to be honest with you, like building a marketplace, you have to have an ability to get the supply chain, the supply right. You have to get the demand right. You need to figure out a way these two pillars are moving side by side, because you can't have one pillar move too much and the other not. You have to connect all the dots through technology. It's a tricky one. So whoever is going after it has to like figure out a way. I'm not discouraging anyone to not go after it, but you need to realize what you're getting into. I think aggregating 20 brands or 20, 30 products from different sellers together is not a marketplace. You can act like a small retailer who purchases from different places, or move over to a drop shipping model कि हम उसको थोड़ा सा सस्ता कर सकते हैं, but that's not a marketplace. I mean, if you want to build a full-fledged marketplace, it's very, very tricky.
And then with that, you add on the maturity of those participants in the marketplace, your sellers, your consumers.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and it's not to say that there's something wrong with Pakistani sellers or buyers. It's that it's an evolution. You know, you'll see sellers evolve in the coming years as well. But because it's not such a big chunk of their business, they're not incentivized to learn every part of it. They're not incentivized to learn that अगर मैं इसकी description लिख रहा हूँ that this is a beautiful cup with, you know, orange and black and blah blah blah. He'll just say यार एक cup है.
उसमें कॉफी पी लो, चाय पी लो, तुम्हारी मर्जी है.
It's just a cup. But now, so that evolution is also the challenging part. So as marketplaces, you have to facilitate that. And then where do you sort of say, how do you act as the gatekeeper to say that, yeah, I'm going to assume this person is honest when he does a first sale until he proves otherwise? Or am I going to assume that I have to see this cup and say, yaar, ye cup वाकई में इसमें आप ये कर सकते हैं, and then I allow him to put it online? How do you build it to scale and sort of balance the pillars to have, you know, allow for that anyone can participate in this economy, yet you cannot abuse this economy? And how do you do that with the consumers as well? It is a very complicated business. As is logistics. All legs of this business are very difficult businesses.
Yeah.
And they're very thankless businesses.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
everyone's expecting you to... And then there's the food guys, right? जो खाना आपको deliver कर रहे हैं. उनका तो और भी मुश्किल 40 मिनट के अंदर गरम खाना आना चाहिए मेरे पास, right? I feel like that's another level. अच्छा, इसमें अभी तक कौन सी चीज़ है? I mean, again, I'm a bit stuck on segments. When I look at segmented e-commerce, कौन से ऐसे बड़े segments हैं पाकिस्तान में जो अभी तक digital नहीं है? और जो बाकी similar markets में digital हो गए. Like I feel like no one's really doing or has been able to crack the pharmaceuticals online thing,
But
right?
all of them are not. That's the point, is that they're all...
I mean, चलो fashion काफी हद तक है. देख, जिसने भी छोटा सा भी brand बनाया उसने e-commerce पे एक store, Instagram पे एक store बना दिया, right? But दवाई हो गई, काफी सारी चीजें, don't you think are still like not really cracked in Pakistan yet?
I think, like I said, I think majority of the categories are not cracked yet. I mean, if you're gonna, you know, that's why you do see more niche players emerging now, because niche is a little bit easier to solve than a broad-based marketplace like ours. I think in broad-based marketplace like ours, if we didn't have the luxury of having Alibaba there to teach us, to back us up, to, you know, facilitate the technology, the money, all of that, it would be very difficult for us to pull it off.
Okay.
It is more reasonable to pick a category and to be able to solve that within a category, right? So you'll see specific beauty players, because उसमें आप एक तो आप फिर ज़्यादा focus कर सकते हैं on high margin categories.
Yeah.
Right? So you can actually focus on those categories and then solve the 10 problems around those rather than the 100 problems around all of the...
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say necessarily any one category, but you do notice more players emerging that are category specific than category agnostic.
And if you were to start a business in Pakistan today, in e-commerce or something, say either in the value chain of e-commerce or like something direct, where do you feel is the biggest opportunity today?
I think to me, some elements of fintech is still a big gap. Logistics, I still think there's a lot more that is going to be done.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't start it because it's a thankless job and I've done it before. But it's fun. But that's, like you said, it's the best part of e-commerce and the worst part of e-commerce. So it's
What about you, Omer?
I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the payments side.
Okay.
Digitalizing of cash on delivery into digital payments, that's going to happen over time.
वो तो काफी लोग उस पे I think कर ही रहे हैं काम नहीं?
Trying to
It's
do
not
it, but
getting-
it's not
Yes,
there
not
yet.
getting
So
there. That's true.
देखो हमारी कोशिश ये होती है कि we try to get as many merchants as possible or try to build a profitable business. Nobody's focusing on enabling the businesses to receive or to be able to receive the debit card, credit card payments. They're focusing on the conversion more as compared to enablement.
Okay.
अभी आप देखोगे how many merchants are actually enabled to receive debit card, credit card payments. So we're working with 25,000 merchants. Less than 10% are...
Less than 10%?
Yeah, way less than 10%.
But what about all these जो इतने सारे aggregators भी हैं आपके उसके जो बैठे हुए हैं, like none of these guys have been able to capture them? Like what's the roadblock? What's the missing piece in that?
A lot of businesses or payment gateways are focusing on larger brands क्योंकि majority of the volumes for digital payments are coming from them.
Okay,
अगर आप छोटे brands पे focus करेंगे तो the conversion is not there. So unless there are a lot of customers who are willing to pay by debit card, credit card, with these smaller brands, then it will make more sense for them to focus on the acquisition of those merchants. So ज़्यादा focus is on the brand side जिसकी वजह से जो आपकी long tail है ना, so nobody is really targeting them, nobody is really enabling them. So मेरे ख्याल से somebody needs to focus on enabling the businesses first and then focus on the conversion of cash on delivery into digital payments. It cannot be conversion happening first and then you focus on enablement. Right? Somebody needs to do that work. So I think there's still a lot of gap there.
Okay, fine. So and that's the problem you think is really right there to solve.
Yeah, that's
Lowest
there.
hanging fruit. Arif, what about you?
For me, like to be honest, like as we think about today, अगर हमारा 100 billion की spending है और 2.5 या 3% online हो रही है, which is like $3 billion, and suddenly we assume 5 years down the road हम किसी तरीके से 10% पे पहुंचेंगे, so there is like $7.5 billion sitting on the table, right? When I think about the biggest opportunity, जो कि आम लोगों के लिए बहुत interesting है, वो ये है कि I mean, what did internet do? A philosophical discussion. Internet came in and really people felt now it's a medium that everybody has great opportunity. And what is e-commerce really doing? It's providing a medium to a lot of people. So for example, if I go back like 15, 20 years ago, if you really wanted to build a big business online, you had to figure out a way कि मैंने किसी बड़ी ज़बरदस्त जगह पे एक बहुत बड़ा सा store खोलना है and I have to invest like 30 million, 40 million to get that right? E-commerce comes in and you have the ability to kind of like do it with a small investment and really like continue to build it. So the kind of examples that I have seen, to be honest, like, and which have been phenomenal, we have seen people starting out a brand out of their home, दो दर्जी बिठा के, and now they have like units of 200, 300 people. And that has happened in like 2 years, 3 years, especially like women out of their homes. And we have seen them grow that business that much. And then we have seen people who have been very, very smart. They came in, I mean, some of the examples we see in Laam, that they came in and they realized that, oh, this is a great seller sitting in one of those like awesome markets and stuff. And they have no clue how to build an online business. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to kind of like build a partnership with them, take their stuff online, put it on some like with some ABC name, put it on Laam, put it on Daraz, and create a distribution channel. And they are doing like tens of millions worth of sale every month now.
Tens of millions of rupees.
Tens of millions of
Okay,
rupees
fine, yeah.
going towards like 50s of millions of rupees like on different channels. So
Okay.
to be honest, like when I look at the 3-5 years, next 3-5 years journey, and we know that $2.5 billion is going to move towards like $7-8 billion. With this democratization that e-commerce and internet brings in, there is like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who have an ability to build a very, very solid business in which, I mean, Omer will provide them 3 million, 4 million of financing, right? So, and people can do that. So for me, to be honest, I still see that as the biggest opportunity. And we have seen time and time again of such very small players coming in who used to visit our office on a bike and now they're coming in their big cars. And that's an opportunity, right?
And are they selling mostly in Pakistan या वो पाकिस्तान से बाहर बेच रहे हैं?
So, for example, when they come on laam, so for us, a big chunk of our volume is outside of Pakistan.
Yeah.
So they obviously would come in with the kind of product, but let's say a lot of them are very, very successful within Pakistan as well. I know stores, and to be honest with you, when I look at their volume and I look at the numbers they're doing, it's like, wow, within Pakistan. And these are like small Shopify stores with the Instagram and some digitization or ads running in. I'm not saying it's easy, but the amount of opportunity we are talking about, like multi-billion dollar that's going to convert toward digitization, and a lot of people have access to it. So you just need to be smart. You just need to take a great offline product, need to figure out, have a playbook of taking it online, and then make a lot of money.
And the democratization is actually very powerful for a country like Pakistan.
Yeah.
Where, you know, like you go to Board Basin, the guy comes to you after, like, aap paan khayenge, uske piche banda hota hai paan. Like, there is a lot of hardworking people in this country.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you know, I've met sellers who have literally, one time I met a seller actually who, all he had to his name was a motorbike. He was a food panda rider. He sold his motorbike and started a store on Daraz. And then
Okay.
was doing 80,000-90,000 rupees in sales a month at that time. And that's how, you know, that was more expensive than more than the bike that he had sold.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So this democratization for a country like Pakistan is very important because you have a huge population, highly digitized, and to be honest, I think we're fairly intelligent people. You know, maybe it's subjective because we're all Pakistani and I'm Pakistani, so I'm saying that. But you know, I actually think that Pakistanis are very hardworking people, and especially, you know, it's we're a lot of us are raised in situations that are not the easiest. You have a lot of things in Pakistan that make life difficult. So you find actually a lot of sellers are very, very intelligent, and they're really able to figure out the consumer, what the consumer wants, they're able to innovate.
Yeah.
And it actually really inspires you. It really inspires you what they're able to build out of their vision, and through their hard work and grit, and bring something from nothing to something with not only minimal investment but really with their own hands. And you enable that. You really, you know, you build something that allows them to do that, and they don't have to go and spend millions of rupees, you know, like you were saying, to set up a store and get inventory. You find elements in their value chain where you can make money, and it's actually quite brilliant sometimes.
In terms of the sellers and the consumers, how many of them are from tier 2 cities, say, or outside of KLI?
I think it has changed a lot. There was a time when there was like 60% coming from KLI, but now that is around 40% coming from KLI, the remaining coming 60%.
Is it because KLI has decreased, or is it like only increased, but the increase in tier 2?
KLI is increasing, so,
Okay,
so
fine.
you can
So-
see that going up, but at the same time, there are tier 2, tier 3 cities picking up. So we have seen more growth in tier 2 and tier 3 cities as compared to KLI.
And they're buying the same products, or they're buying something different?
देखो ब्रांड्स की तो हर जगह पे डिमांड सेम ही है, राइट? सो अपने व्हाट वी हैव सीन इज कि अगर आप लाहौर में बैठे हैं ना, तो यू माइट नॉट बी बाइंग सैफायर एज मच एज यू बाइंग अदर प्रोडक्ट्स विच आर नॉट अवेलेबल
In Lahore.
या इन लाहौर, या आप मतलब आपने जिसके लिए आपको पता है कि सैफायर के स्टोर पे जाके मैं ले लूँगे, लेकिन टियर 2 टियर 3 सिटीज़ में ऐसे नहीं है फ्रेंचाइजेस. सो दे आर मोर अट्रैक्टेड टुवर्ड्स बाइंग सैफायर ऑनलाइन एज कम्पेयर टू समबडी हु सिटिंग इन KLI. जिसको स्टोर तो उसने मार्केट तो जाना ही है, वहाँ पे हर मार्केट में सैफायर भी है, खाड़ी भी है, सो दे कैन बाय इट फ्रॉम देयर. तो ट्रेंड्स डिफरेंट हैं. सो ऑब्वियसली दैट्स द रीजन व्हाई वी सी tier 2 and tier 3 cities growing faster than tier 1 cities.
What about you?
I think for us, like obviously the number 1, 2, 3 cities still remain KLI.
Okay.
Which is, I believe, for pretty much everyone is the
yeah.
case. But at the same time, the growth rate, if I look at 2022 versus the first quarter of 2025, the growth rate of the small cities is phenomenal.
Okay.
They are growing much faster in terms of percentage. The other thing that I would call out is that we are noticing another interesting pattern is not only in terms of the consumer growth, but the seller growth as well. I think smaller cities are catching up. They are realizing that we just talked about the democratization aspect. They are realizing that, oh, you know, even if I'm sitting in like Faisalabad, Sialkot, in terms of e-commerce, I mean, I'm pretty much the same as sitting in. And to be honest with you, they have a slight advantage. We notice that in fashion, the labor cost in Lahore is a lot higher than the labor cost in some of these smaller cities.
Okay.
So they can be a bit more price competitive. I mean, you talked about Pakistan. We all understand it's a very price sensitive market. 200, 300 rupees competition is continuing to go on. And they have that slight competitive advantage. So I also see that in the next few years, this surge of the sellers coming out of from tier 2, tier 3 cities is going to continue to be on the
For Lahore is the most expensive city. Like the
Is it
cost
the
of
most
labor,
expensive?
yeah, it's the highest in Lahore.
highest.
Not in Karachi?
No. Karachi is way cheaper as compared to Lahore.
Why? Would you like? I don't know. That's news to me. But why would you
If you
say
want to
that?
get if you want to build a customer service team in Karachi as compared to Lahore, it's going to be like 20-30% less cost if you're building the team in
20 to
Karachi.
30%.
Yeah.
I would imagine Karachi के rent ज़्यादा होंगे नहीं? Lahore से तो at least.
So we're talking about the resource, right? So the cost of resource in Karachi is less as compared to Lahore, plus the output is more as well. Right? So they're more professional. Karachi people are, yeah, they're more professional. They're
Now
very
we're getting into another podcast.
Yeah, this always happens. We always descend into Karachi versus Lahore for some reason. I mean, I'm glad Karachi is winning overall. But
In what?
in
Like,
not the
we
roads.
charge less? Like, what do you think?
No, the output is
Output
high.
is better.
Output is higher.
Output is high. Or, like for less cost, yeah. Like और क्या चाहिए?
The roads.
The roads चाहिए, infrastructure चाहिए, बिल्कुल. अच्छा, to wrap it all up, let's come down to like tips for actionable advice for other founders. How do you guys hire? Like, what would be your best hiring tip to anyone who is making a team?
For me, I'll just share quickly because I think I can do it in one line. Is that I try to hire people that I think can eventually replace me.
That's
That's
been
a
across the
mantra.
board.
Yeah, like generally, if they may not replace me tomorrow, but can I see this person replacing me at some
Eventually,
point
yeah.
down the road? And so that then I want someone who has some specific values, who has who's sharing knowledge rather than withholding knowledge, who's analytical and data driven. But generally, if I could capture into one sentence, it's someone that I think can one day replace me.
What about you guys? What have you?
So obviously, culture-wise, needs to be a fit because you're building a team. It's like a family, so everybody needs to think the same way. But coming to what he said, that somebody you can learn from, right? So you cannot work with somebody who you're just constantly teaching because so people who are going to be around you, you need to be learning from them as well. So people who are better than you at their job, right? So you can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
And mostly you're not good at
Most things.
yeah, most of the things. So maybe one or two things, but then you want to delegate it to people who can do it better than you, who you can learn from, and then they can grow the way company is growing as well. So company cannot outgrow, like you cannot hit a glass ceiling just because people cannot grow beyond that, right? So you need to think, okay, what the vision is, where do you want to be? And is this the team that's going to get you there? Or you're going to get to a point where you just have to see that we're hitting a glass ceiling because people cannot grow. People cannot grow as the demand of the market. Yeah, company की growth ज़्यादा है, लोगों की growth नहीं हो रही, and they're holding it down, right? So you need to build a team, especially around you, which can really push you to be better, which people you can learn from, and people who are open to feedback as well. That's the only way you can keep growing. Otherwise, when you get to a point where you feel like I know everything, that's where you stop growing. So people with
Okay.
yeah.
Those are the important things
Yeah.
for you. What about you, Arif? Like, what have you learned so far? What are the biggest hiring mistakes you've made so far? And what have you learned from them?
Please list down their names.
Yeah. To be honest, like for us, like hiring after evolving it in the last 4 or 5 years, I was very fortunate in Facebook. When I joined an office, we were 150 people. When I left that office, we were 10,000 people.
Okay, wow.
So I had to do like at least 10 interviews every week. And
Okay.
we had to do like multiple Ivy League trips to continue to hire. But one of the things, I think, to be honest, like I had to learn a lot of things that I learned there in terms of hiring in Pakistan. One thing that obviously that you want to do right in hiring is that you want to hire the best people of that field. If I'm hiring in finance department, that guy needs to be the best in finance. If I'm hiring a software engineer, that guy needs to be one of the top software engineers, right? So there is the technical aspect of every job that we try to assess and try to make sure that is that person in the top 5 or 10 percentile or not of that field. The second thing that I would say is that we really like I have started really looking into is their why.
Okay.
To be honest with you, like one question that I love asking people is that, oh, forget about Laam. What are the other 3 companies that you would love to join? And
Okay,
I'm
that's
looking
interesting.
forward to hear the names if they say like some big top MNC name, right? Because the thing is that when you are jumping into a startup or you're jumping into like kind of like an early stage company, if you don't have the same why, I have figured out in 6 to 9 months, you're not gonna fit in. So for me, somebody like, for example, I was interviewing someone earlier today, and that person was like, I asked her the same question, and she was like, "Oh, Nestle offered me, and I told my family this is the last place I'm gonna go." Because for me, for her, it was like, I want to be part of a small team, and I want to have a big chunk owned where I can feel I'm making a lot of impact, right? And that can relate to what we're trying to do. On the other hand, if somebody wants that, I have a path drawn, I just want to go and walk on that path, don't go join a startup, to be honest. Like, so I think for us, understanding that why through multiple behavioral interviews or some of the asking behavioral questions of why they made different choices in life, how they made it. I think these are the two main things that we are trying to look for.
Okay, last question. What do you guys look for when you're raising funds from an investor? Besides the money, of course. Like, what is it that, how do you choose? Because you've both raised substantial amounts of capital. How do you choose that this is the right investor for me?
More money.
पैसे देते हैं यार.
Fund size.
No, but generally, like, were you spoiled for investor choice at any point? मैं ये भी पूछ लेता हूँ ना, like, वरना तो आंसर बड़ा simple है कि जो डालने को तैयार है.
So when you're growing really fast, you get to have an option, alhamdulillah. Okay,
Yeah.
who do you want to work with?
Yeah.
Obviously, terms do matter. लेकिन terms भी जो आप देखते हैं, normally it's basically their mindset that translates into those terms, right? So those terms normally indicate what kind of people they are and who you will be working with in the future, because this is not like a 1-year gig, 2-year gig. So for us, we're not looking for an exit. So for us, this is our legacy. So we're going to keep doing this. For investors, that might be 5 or 7 years, but for us, we're not looking at it for 5 to 7 years. So if you're going to work with somebody for 5 to 7 years, that's going to leave an impact on your legacy for the rest of your life. So you want to be building it with somebody who is aligned on the goals, on the values, why you're doing what you're doing, and then the mindset. So do they have a winning mindset, or they just have one thing in mind, just to make money? Obviously, everybody wants to make money, and they're investors. So main purpose is,
उनको काम ही यही है,
yeah,
literally, yeah.
but how much aligned are they on winning? Because we're doing this to win, right? So we want to keep constantly winning. And then if you have an investor who's aligned on that and who's as ambitious as you are, then it makes it very easy for you to keep fighting for your market share, keep fighting for your product, keep fighting for your growth.
Basically, you don't have to fight inside the house.
Yeah, you want to fight together,
Everyone's
right?
focused outside, yeah.
So it just makes it easier for you to focus on the outside elements where you have to like keep growing and keep.
You're both also part of Endeavor's program, right? Both of you. So how has that been helpful?
It's been super helpful. I think Arif can add to that as well. That so it's a very big network of very successful entrepreneurs around the world, right? So we're still at a very early stage as entrepreneurs, as in startup ecosystem as well. So as Pakistani founders, there's a lot for us to learn from them. And then when you speak to them, and then because they have seen these cycles before,
Yeah.
right? So you're speaking to somebody who's running a startup valued at $10 billion. It's not about them valued at $10 billion. It means that they have gone through different cycles.
Yeah.
Similar cycles like this, like what we have been going through for the last 2 years. So how they navigated through it. Right? And when they look at your business model and then look at your strategy, and when they discuss it with you and when they agree with you on certain things, it gives you validation that, okay, what you're doing, it's not you for the first time going through it. Somebody have gone through it. And then what you're doing is technically in the right direction, right?
It's
So
like
there are no right and wrong answers to any solution, but just because something worked for them doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for us as well. But it's just the validation, it's just the backing that you get from very successful entrepreneurs who have seen these cycles, and then them lending you a hand, like where you need help as a network as well, an endeavor as well. So it's been super helpful for us. I think Arif can add.
No, I think to be honest, like generally the best advice I can give people is generally a path that I have walked, and they're about to walk that path, and I can tell them that, oh, that is a bad turn to make.
Yeah.
When we talk about Endeavor, you generally meet a lot of people who have walked that path, as Omer called out, and it's very, very easy to relate. So I remember, so Endeavor is, I think I would claim, is one of the best entrepreneurial network ever built. because the quality of the entrepreneurs they were able to
Ever
put in.
like you're
Like, to be honest, like,
YC and everything. I mean, those are also pretty solid
but
ones,
they're
right?
different,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
This is a network. This is not like a venture builder or anything, right? And the reason I say that is that because when I was going through the process, eventually, like I was back then, Ali Samir used to be the MD, and
Yeah.
he would be like, "Oh, now you need to talk to this person." I was like, "How many people I need to talk to?"
Yeah.
Eventually, I ended up talking to close to like 16, 17 people. And I was like, in my notes, I was writing down the name of everyone that I was talking to and making a call. I think 4 of them were unicorn founders
Yeah.
that I ended up talking to. And I think the kind of insights I got in those 10 minutes asking them that, oh, I have this problem. What do you think I should do? Was just phenomenal. And I was like in awe of like that most of them, like the guy who built the unicorn, he told me like, oh, I built a search engine when I was like 17. Aaron, his name was Aaron. I was built a search engine when I was 17 years old. I was like, and then I told him I used to work in Bing, and then we talked about building a index or building a crawler and all those things. And I was like, you meet a lot of such phenomenal people who give you phenomenal advice, and then the network is all there in terms of connecting with not only the entrepreneurs but also the investors as well.
Okay. Excellent. Any final thoughts on what we spoke about? Any advice for young founders who will probably be watching this and want to get into this sector?
Yeah, I think it's a young sector that I think has a bright future. You just got to stay in it. You got to stay in the game, and you got to just not give up. I think that's about it from my end.
I mean, we meet a lot of people who normally say that we want to start a startup, we want to start a business, but we're just waiting for this time. So the right time is now. It's not that time, honestly, because even if you started 2 years from now with whatever savings you're gonna save until that time, you're gonna have to go through the same cycle. So the sooner you start, the better, because that time is gonna come anyways, right? So just go through that process right now. And by that time, what you're thinking 2 years, when you're going to start, you might have achieved a lot by that time, right? So now is the right time.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I would echo that. Like in terms of like e-commerce sector, this is probably a really, really fun time. I mean, we talked about our infrastructure is still broken, but go look back 5 years ago, right?
It was far worse, huh?
Yeah.
It was far worse. It is much, much easier to do a lot of things now than what it was 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure in 5 years we will claim the same thing because every company is trying to innovate. I'd probably add on top of that, like not only in e-commerce, but even I think what I am noticing by talking to general friends in the entrepreneurial circle and startup circle, I'm noticing a lot of our ecosystem has become a lot more stronger. I think companies that have survived this like 2022, 2023 wave, and they have come out of it, I kind of like see them to be ready for that long run. And I also see a very mature ecosystem. Now we have like also a lot of people who have worked. So for example, now we hire people from different companies who have worked in a startup, have understood what it means, and they have also like understood ownership is a different model. So I would actually say that even for people, like obviously e-commerce is a great place to start. Even for people who are thinking about startup, probably it's a great time as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you.
time.
Thank you for inviting us.
And really appreciate it.
Yeah, this
Thanks
was
a lot.
fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.